In Scotland, the SNP is the challenger in every single Tory-held seat. So the electoral maths is clear. If you want Rishi Sunak out of Downing Street, vote for the Scottish National Party. To put it bluntly, across the UK, the Tories are on course for a huge defeat, a wipeout. Voters in England are going to send them packing. That is not in doubt. And that begs the question, what kind of change, if any, is that going to mean at Westminster? Now, I'm not saying that Labour are exactly the same as the Tories. They're not. But they are giving an awfully good impression of them. The only substantive change Labour seem to be offering is to change their own principles. And let me give you one really telling and worrying example. Their health spokesman, Wes Streeting, the man who in a few weeks' time will be the UK Government's Health Secretary, last week set out his plans for the NHS. He criticised the Tories on the issue of the NHS and the private sector. Fair enough, you might say. Bad news. He was not criticising the Tories for using the private sector too much. He was criticising the Tories for not using the private sector enough. He went on to say he wanted to go further than Tony Blair's New Labour. And he wrote, "I want the NHS to form partnerships with the private sector that goes beyond just hospitals." That sounds an awful lot like creeping privatisation of the NHS to me. Let me be absolutely crystal clear. The SNP rejects privatisation of the NHS, whether that is Tory privatisation or Labour privatisation. And this is why it matters to Scotland. In another interview, the very same spokesman also said this: "All roads lead back to Westminster, because even though this is devolved, decisions taken in Westminster have an impact on the NHS across the whole country. If there is creeping privatisation of the NHS, or if Labour do not increase investment in the NHS in England, our precious National Health Service faces a very bleak future. That's why I'm asking people in Scotland to unite on July the 4th and vote SNP to protect Scotland's National Health Service. Labour's tack to the right is designed to win votes in England. They don't seem to care too much about Scotland, though. They think Scotland's in the bag. What other explanation could there be to allow them to select a candidate who said this about criminal people smugglers? And I quote, "Why don't you send the smuggler gangs and put them on the barge that has been set aside for asylum seekers and ship the barge up to the north of Scotland? Who cares?" Well, I'll tell you who cares. The SNP cares. That's who cares.
That is, of course, John Swinney. He's talking live there for the SNP. Well, if you just joined us, welcome to GB News. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 8 minutes after 3 o'clock. Now, before we get stuck into the debates over the next hour, let me introduce you to my clashers. Joining me, Gary Mond. He's the chairman of the National and Jewish Assembly, and also Jonathan Liss. Now, this is what's coming up today. Are the digital campaigns winning over voters? 1 in 10 adults use TikTok for news in 2023, putting it on a par with The Guardian. Social media platform TikTok is proving influential in this election. We'll take a look at some of the videos that are being posted. Then a second private school has blamed Labour's tax raid for its closure. Sir Keir Starmer has promised to charge private schools 20% VAT, as well as end business rates relief if he comes into power after the general election. The Lib Dems have attacked the government's record on health and are promising to reverse £1 billion of Conservative cuts. The party says it would fund local services by cracking down on tax evasion. And the Prime Minister's pledged that states' pensions will never be taxed in a policy being dubbed as the Triple Lock Plus. That's as Health Secretary Victoria Atkins claimed that Labour has been silent about their plans for pensions. Well, that's all coming up. There's a lot to digest. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Send me your comments, your views, gbnews.com/your say. Right, so welcome to my election connection. So let's have a look, because I talked about TikTok. So let's have a look. Is this a TikTok election is the question I'm asking, because all the parties are using it. I mean, let's take a look at the Labour parties, what they're doing on TikTok.
I'm looking for a new Prime Minister. Big plans, good vibes, change lives. Big plans, good vibes, change lives.
Yes, there's a sort of sharp cutting clips of Labour and Keir Starmer and all that kind of thing going on with their TikTok. Who are they trying to attract? Maybe the young voters that they were maybe bringing in to be able to vote if they come in, 16, 17-year-olds, but a lot of people are on TikTok. Right, let's take a look at the Conservatives next. Now, they have a very interesting campaign. Take a listen. So what you had there was some interesting sort of fairground music, and some questions about the different policies. But the Conservatives were focusing on what Labour's policies were, and on the health one, they had a very confused-looking West Streeting at the bottom of it. So it's just you know, kind of taking the mickey out of the Labour Party policies. That was the Conservatives. Let's take a look at the Lib Dems. Now, this again, you know, Ed Davey's been falling and eating and doing all sorts of things. This is their TikTok campaign.
Online. Are you in or are you out?
What are you talking? In or out of what?
No time for questions, just action. In or out.
Okay, well, then I'm out.
I'm sorry, Jet. Actually, you're already in.
Okay, then why would you ask me?
Because I thought you would go, I'm in, Bob, and we would have had a really cool moment, but you kind of ruined the whole thing.
Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart having a heart-to-heart by the looks of it. OK, so that's the Lib Dems. This is reform. This is what they're doing on TikTok. Everyone's doing it. Have a look at this.
It's a matter of absolute principle. You shouldn't make money from mental health, and it is a matter of principle. It's an absolute matter of principle. That's been underused, and we could do more of it. And that would clear, you know, 230,000 people off the waiting list
so more use of the
year.
Private sector in the NHS under Labour.
Yes.
So they focused on the flip-flops, Keir Starmer's flip-flops. We've also got the Greens now. This is what they're doing on TikTok.
The hardest thing to do, but you gotta make your own kind of music, sing your own.
That's what the Greens are doing. But listen, what do you think? What are your thoughts on these campaigns? Are they wise to be using social media in this way? Well, joining me now is political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, there's been a lot going on. They're using all of the TikTok stuff. And you've also been on the battle bus, haven't you, with the Lib Dems, I think it was? Were you with the Lib Dems?
No, I've been on the new Conservative battle bus yesterday, which was unveiled in Redcar. Very nice it was too. We've been hearing a lot on TikTok and elsewhere about the Labour battle bus. I think let's have a look at Angela Rayner showing off her fridge.
Come on, guys, we're going on the bus. So it's a big bus. It has lots of room in it. It's got some great seating arrangements. Not sure about the music yet because I've not put any on because I've only just got it today. But come on board. This is where all the action happens, where all of the staff team are helping as well. I have some samosas and cakes that have been donated. Obviously, we need Yorkshire tea. And then I have a fridge. And in this fridge, I have a pint size of semi-skimmed milk. And how did this get here? We have a lettuce. and lots of water, because you have to keep hydrated when you're on the road. And we have a little secret area in the back, so we keep going. We have a little secret area.
So that's the Labour bus. I've not been on it yet. Hopefully I will be on it in the coming days. But the Conservative one, yes, it's got a fridge. It's also got not one but two ovens, and it's also got at the bit back a private bit where the Prime Minister was shut away yesterday, busy working. He's got a lot of work to do, hasn't he, to overcome this huge poll lead. Worth saying that the Conservatives really thought that they had the momentum. They've certainly got the energy. They've been rolling out all these new policies, but it doesn't seem to be shifting the polls at all. In fact, if anything, the Labour lead seems to be increasing. Just a quick word about TikTok. As of Friday, Labour had put out 54 TikTok videos and the Conservatives only 14. Though, of course, the Conservatives are very directly appealing to older voters, aren't they, with many of their announcements, because the older you are, the more likely you are to vote Conservative, and the younger you are, well, you're more likely to vote for the Labour Party. But the Labour Party have spent £1.2 million so far, I think just in the last week on social media. That's 4 times what the Conservatives have spent.
Wow, fascinating. Well, Catherine Foster, thank you very much. That is Catherine Foster. She's our political editor. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel journalist and political commentator Jonathan Liss, and also Chairman of the National Jewish Assembly, Gary Mond. All right, well, welcome to you both. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Right, so I want to start with you first. TikTok campaigns, you're seeing them all using different things? Were you impressed by any of them?
I was amused by them. I thought, you know, they are obviously targeted at very media-savvy, social media-savvy, so there'll be a lot of memes there that will be instantly familiar to people who, what we might call very online, people who spend a lot of their time on social media. And there was one that really made me laugh a few days ago after the National Service announcement, where it was sort of Cilla Black singing Surprise, Surprise. Cilla Black, people may know, is a very sort of popular figure, despite obviously not being alive anymore.
I was going to say, she's not alive.
She's a very...
See how she's doing that?
It's very popular for people to use her image and singing voice in particular. It's part of memes. Not always in a kind way, has to be said. But there's a sort of a film of her singing Surprise, Surprise. With a point of view, your 18th birthday when Rishi Sunak turns up sending you to war. It's obviously not entirely what the National Service announcement is about, but it is so it's quite a clever way of engaging younger people to get out and vote, because as we know, they're the people who are the least likely to vote, and also they're the most
Interesting
likely
you should say that young people would hate it. That's a huge presumption. There will be some that do enjoy it.
I don't think it's going to be as many younger people who are in favour of this policy as there would be older voters.
Well,
look, Nana, 8% of young people are planning to vote Conservative. I think the stats speak for themselves.
Well, we'll see what actually happens, but what do you think?
I think that without TikTok and without Facebook, the actual turnout at the general election will continue to fall. We've seen generally the interest in politics going down and down. Now, what this is going to do is going to reduce the fall, and we're actually going to see more people turning out to vote who probably otherwise wouldn't have. Having said that, I don't actually think it's going to sway people's opinions to make them vote Labour instead of Conservative or vice versa. And I also think that the big winners of this will be the more fringe parties who are less well known. I think the Green Party could well do very well out of it, and the Lib Dems. And on the right, I think Reform UK could do well out of it, because they're less well known. People say, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I only thought of Labour and Conservatives. And now I'm actually thinking of all the parties. But I think the overall shift in the vote is going to be minimal.
You don't think so? But Labour are looking at policies. I mean, Jonathan mentioned the Conservatives' policy of national service. Labour Party were talking about getting 16 and 17-year-olds eligible to vote. I mean, that was one of theirs. Possibly the reason why they've got so much going on TikTok.
But I think the die has been cast. Most people have made up their mind how they're going to vote in the last few months, not just in question of these two policies. I mean, you're right to highlight them, but I don't think that they're necessarily vote shifters. I think people have largely made up their minds, as the opinion polls are showing, the steadiness of the Labour lead.
Well, there may be
some... extension, actually. I mean, that's...
Or even extension,
that is just extraordinary. The fact that you had Opinion, for example, which is is one of the polling companies that has a methodology that tends to favour the Conservatives. They've had the smallest Labour lead in their polls recently. They had 14 points, whereas others were sort of 20 or 25. And last night's poll for the Observer had them on Labour extending its lead to 20 points. Obviously, a lot can happen in the next 4 weeks.
But that's right.
But this is not the direction of travel that the Conservatives need to have at this stage in the game. There are very, very few people outside of Rishi Sunak's inner circle who think the Conservatives are going to do anything close to having even hung Parliament. So it's really, I think, now about a core vote strategy trying to mitigate the damage.
There is actually an additional point that could well blow all of us away in a few days' time when we're going to see the close of nominations to see how many candidates the Conservatives and other parties have actually got in place. A few days ago, there was 180 candidates for the Conservatives still to fill. If we have a situation where, for example, there's 100 vacancies for the Conservatives, that's something like 8 or 9 million people who won't be able to vote Conservative.
Surely. I mean, look, I think
how many do you think? I think
the bigger risk is, look, we know that Conservatives are on their knees, but I think there are probably 150 Conservatives, councillors who would sort of step into the breach if necessary. But the problem is, and this is on both sides actually, is that you're going to have a lot of people who've been selected at the last minute. There might not have been due diligence done. There's going to be a lot of archaeology going on in those candidates' social media histories, and so I wouldn't be at all surprised if, in the opening months of the new Parliament, a lot of people are going to be suspended, and we're going to just have some chaos while these things will filter through.
Well, that's possibly Rishi Sunak's plan, why he launched the election by surprise and gave everyone only 6 weeks to get their stuff together. Well, stay with me. This is GB News. It's just coming up to 20 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, the Lib Dems have attacked the government's record on health and are promising to reverse £1 billion of Conservative cuts. But next, a second private school has blamed Labour's tax raid for closure as Sir Keir Starmer has promised to charge VAT to 20% on these schools.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, England fans have got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon. Welcome to GB News. We are Britain's election channel. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 24 minutes after 3 o'clock. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. This is The Clash. Now, a second private school has blamed Labour's tax raid for its closure. They said that it was pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a struggling school, but it was managing until this final nail in the coffin. Sir Keir Starmer has promised to charge private schools 20% VAT, as well as end business rates relief if he comes into power after the general election. Now, he said he'd do that straight away. The party estimates this will raise about £1.7 billion of funds to be spent on the state school sector. Labour, however, have been urged to abandon its plans to charge VAT if Budget Watchdog forecasts that it'll ultimately lose the taxpayer money. That is, of course, the OBR. They're saying that if it does not, if it costs the taxpayer, the OBR will tell the Labour Party to abandon this plan. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak has pledged to scrap Mickey Mouse university courses such as creative arts and design and media, journalism, and communications to help fund 100,000 apprentices. Problem there is, seriously, what is a Mickey Mouse degree? Which one? Who decides? Joining me now to discuss, Jonathan and Gary. Right, I'm going to start with you, Gary Mond.
Starting with the private schools, I think this is very, very dangerous. What is going to happen is, in the first instance, there will be growing numbers of people who will not be able to afford to send their children to private schools. And these are families coming from ordinary backgrounds whose parents are probably working overtime or taking second jobs to be able to afford the actual school fees. And so the first step will be we will see a decline in number of people going to private schools. Then the next step...
We've already seen that,
and that's going to accelerate.
Fewer applications already.
That's going to accelerate. And then the next step will be a number of private schools will close. And that number might be quite great. And we will see a lot of unemployment caused by teachers and others working in the private school sector losing their jobs. And this is not going to be good for the economy. And then, of course, the state sector has to absorb all those children who were going into private schools. So I don't think this has been thought through by Keir Starmer. I hope it doesn't happen. It is a potentially disastrous policy.
Well, there's also the children who then have to leave the schools, because obviously that is psychologically quite damaging if you've got to go from one school to another. Some will maybe doing GCSEs. And then there's also the prospect that actually the plan was to raise £1.7 billion, but that is based on most of these people still attending. So if you do not get those numbers, you do not make that money. And then the actual education budget is about £116 billion. So this that they will be getting is a drop in the ocean. Jonathan?
Well, I mean, what happened to the Thatcherite mantra of standing on your own 2 feet? I mean, the idea that, you know, sort of private schools should be able to survive without getting tax breaks from the government. And so, you know...
Well, aren't the parents already paying once? I mean, look, at each...
that's their choice.
Yeah, but it's not really a tax break if you're paying, say, each pupil gets about £7,500 from the taxpayer's purse, which obviously comes from a big fund that everybody's paying into. So if everybody who is, you know, adults are paying £7,500 for each kid, then they're also paying for their own children. This doesn't...
Schools are under no obligation to pass on any VAT that they are charged on to parents for a start. That's entirely within schools' remit. A lot of schools up and down the country have had to make all kinds of cutbacks through austerity in the last 14 years. And I think the majority of parents, 93%, who send their children to state schools, will have limited sympathy. That sort of other parents will also...
93%? What did you get that figure for?
I think 7% of children in this country are privately educated.
Oh, right, so you're saying 93%
well, I'm not
of
sure,
other parents won't
that's not
have
necessarily
sympathy.
93% of parents. I'm not saying... Obviously, look, no one is... I don't think there should be a kind of a class war issue here. But, you know, we are obviously in very, very difficult times, and governments have to make priorities. Governments have to find money. And I think that a lot of people find it unfair that private schools should have a tax break.
But this is not really... But I hear what you're saying, but just if you look at the figures, so adults are paying about £7,500 for each child in state education. That comes from a full pot that's coming from all the adults, whether they have children or not, whether you send children to private school or not. I would have thought, looking at that, if somebody is then paying for private education, actually that person should get some sort of tax break because they are paying twice.
Look, the taxation is kind of a collective idea that we all pay into a pot, and we're all entitled to grow out of it. In the same way that sort of, young people are paying for other people's pensions. I mean, that's just how things work.
So the point I'm making is that you're calling this a tax break for the school, but yet the parents will have to pay for this. Obviously, it will get passed to the parent, so it'll be a charge to the parents. But the bottom line is, this may not raise any money, and yet it might well cause disruption.
Well, obviously, we'll have to wait and see what the OBR says about this. But I have to question the first thing that we talked about a school closing. I mean, the last time I checked...
This is the second school.
Right, the last time I checked, Labour had not actually won the election. And so you're kind of thinking, if no VAT has been charged on that school yet...
Do you have children?
They're getting ready.
I don't have children.
Well, I think that's why you're saying that, because what happens is you book your kids into the school for the next term. So the parents are looking at that thinking, crikey, I can't afford the year, so I'm not going to enlist my child at that school. So before they're even in power, and as you said yourself, the polls are showing that Labour may well are likely to have a landslide election. We don't know, but it seems a foregone. So if that is the case, these parents are looking ahead, and that's what you do with schools. You look ahead.
But Luke, the other point, I suppose, that's related to that is that private schools are part of a capitalist society which operates within a free market. And within a free market, there's no one has a divine right to succeed in their business. Private schools are businesses. Some will succeed on their own merit, some will fail. I don't think that we should be in the business of using the state to support private enterprises necessarily.
I think we're the only country that charged VAT on education in that way. No other country does that.
I was just going to say there's an additional point here which hasn't been made, and that is that there's a freedom of choice element here. That what we're doing, if we actually put VAT onto private school fees, what we're doing is we're going to make it harder for people to afford it, and the possibility being, which exists, of sending your child to private school, if you want to, will reduce.
Gary, isn't that a kind of extraordinary thing to say about freedom of choice? There might be millions of parents who would like to choose to send their children to private schools.
How they spend their money.
No, I'm sorry. It's not how they spend their money. Look, when 30 years ago, you could have a situation, much like people being able to buy a house on quite modest salaries, sort of 40 or 50 years ago. A lot of people were able to send their kids to private school because it wasn't reserved for the extremely wealthy. The private school fees have gone up way above inflation over the last few years. It's now out of the range of a lot of middle-class professionals in the way that it wasn't.
Can I just say, this school, though, is most of the kids have special education needs, so a lot of the private schools aren't necessarily
I think they'll have
the Eatons and things. No, that's not really what's been coming through, and it looks as though this school, some of them were struggling, but it does seem to be this is the straw that broke the camel's back. But finally, very briefly to you, Gary, what should Sir Keir Starmer be saying though? Because this is obviously a way of funding education. That's his plan. It could fund 1.7 billion.
There are many other areas across the economy where cuts can be made to fund education. Many areas. I mean, for example, in overseas aid, in a complete review of the NHS, we're spending £180 billion a year on the NHS, and I think that there's never been a proper review, an efficiency review of the spending in the NHS. That there's so many areas where cuts can be made. This, to actually use the politics of envy, because this is what's involved here, the politics of envy, in regard to making it so much harder for parents to send their children to a private school if they want to, is not the way forward.
It's not the politics of envy. It's not the politics.
You don't think? Well, listen, we can carry on with this in a moment's time, but if you just join us, welcome on board. This is The Clash. It's just coming up to 32 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua, still to come. The Tories are pledging to fund more GPs, but removing managers and senior staff, saving reportedly £550 million a year. Is that a good idea? First, let's get your latest news.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. It's just after 3:30. A look at the headlines this afternoon, and we'll start with a roundup of the election news. First, with Labour, migration is being included in their manifesto, with the party promising to reduce the number if it wins the general election. Sir Keir Starmer says he'll introduce new laws to train British workers, to plug gaps in the job market and to strengthen anti-exploitation laws. While speaking to The Sun on Sunday, he said that last year's net migration figure of 685,000 people has to come down. He didn't, though, set a time frame or put a specific target on that promise. Meanwhile, the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats are focusing on the NHS today. The Tories say they'll build 100 new GP surgeries and modernise 150 others to help make appointments more available. The party has also pledged to build 50 new diagnostic centres. Those plans, they say, would be paid for by cutting the number of NHS managers back to pre-pandemic levels. And the SNP has launched its election campaign this afternoon, accusing Labour and the Conservatives of failing Scotland. Leader and First Minister John Swinney has said in the last hour that they're the only party which will put Scotland's needs first. And his representative in Westminster, Stephen Flynn, also told the launch event today that a vote for SNP is a vote for Scotland. And finally, police have made 56 arrests following the Champions League, as some football fans tried to force their way into the stadium and others invaded the pitch. Thousands of people were at Wembley to watch Real Madrid beat Borussia Dortmund last night. The vast majority of those arrested, we understand, are still in custody. Most of the arrests were for attempts to breach security, but 5 were made because people got onto the grass. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. For more, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. You can scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, if you just tuned in, welcome. It's officially summer. You wouldn't think so. We've got a brand new summer giveaway, £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Also, a brand new iPhone, AirPods and £500 that you could spend at a UK attraction of your choice. So if you like theme parks, visiting stately homes, or you fancy a spa day out, it could all be yours. Here's how.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Coming up, Nana's Niggle today. I'm asking, has Britain lost its greatness? The election, the royal family, the army, nothing seems to be great anymore. But whose fault is it?
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is about the Biden administration kind of resisting calls from Harry's lawyers whether or not this ongoing thing about releasing his visa records over the alleged, in Spare, he admitted to taking, remember his memoir Spare? He admitted to taking cocaine, marijuana and magic mushrooms. And a lot of people are saying, was he honest and truthful in his application, in his visa application? You have to say, have you taken drugs? He said no, and then in Spare he said yes. So I think this is absolutely fascinating. They're saying they can't release these records because there is a stigma attached to law enforcement records. Yes, there's a stigma attached to that, but then don't say... everybody else, if you write yes on a visa application, you will be chucked out of the United States. You will be denied entry. So I think this is fascinating that on this issue of whether there is a stigma for Harry or not, he can have his law enforcement records not released into the public domain.
The bottom line is, do we want him back?
So what's interesting is it seems to be becoming a political dividing line in the States because Biden is the administration trying to do Harry a favour by keeping them under wraps, but Trump has promised that he will, you know, that the file will be made public if he wins again.
Trump's been very strong on this. He said, you know, if Harry lied, then he's out.
The one thing about America is their politicians make ours look sane, which is saying something.
I'm slightly confused about this whole story because, OK, sure, Prince Harry has said this. How many pop stars, rock stars, movie stars, like every
the difference is, well, I don't think it's just British. I think millions of Brits, to be fair to them, lie on the form every year. Millions of people from around the world lie on the form every year. Not, of course,
I'm not going to name any pop star specifically, but I would be mightily surprised if any hadn't indulged in what...
Yes, but of course they haven't given written evidence in their biography that they have, and that's the difference.
Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 39 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, this is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. You can also stream the show live on YouTube. I'm Nana Akua. Now, just before the break, we were discussing Labour's private school VAT plans. But Jonathan and Gary, what are your thoughts on Rishi Sunak scrapping Mickey Mouse degrees? Joining me to discuss, Jonathan Liss and also Gary Mond. So that's what they're saying. We've got a load of different ones. So we've got things like English. Is that a Mickey Mouse degree?
No, of course not.
Journalism, Mickey Mouse degree?
No, look,
I mean,
what is it?
The bottom line is you've got to work out. The bottom line is you've got to work out what a Mickey Mouse degree is before you can actually then determine whether to scrap it or not.
Look, what is the conversation that we're actually having here? Do we want to say that we should go back to a kind of 1950s education model where only a very narrow band of British society ever had aspirations to go to university, and that when they did, those people were then sort of funneled into the establishment that would fill sort of like the top roles across society, and that actually changed under successive governments, including obviously famously John Major, with the liberalisation of universities in the early 1990s, where a lot of polytechnics became universities, and what you had after that was a really great broadening out of the university sector, where all kinds of people thought we can actually have a university education, we can also have more opportunities, more aspirations. That's supposed to be an absolute conservative principle. So when someone like Rishi Sunak is saying you can do just fine without going to university, would he say that to his own children?
Well, a little while ago we had lots of apprenticeships as well, which some would consider a far superior, because not only do you get paid, you also learn on the job and you build your skill. And some of these degrees, OK, I'm going to ask you, creative arts and design, Mickey Mouse, yes or no?
No.
No. No?
No,
All right,
I think
media,
that, I think this is
communications, yes
I think
or no? No, Gary, I'm asking you a question.
No, but the comment should be a question of demand, not so much...
Agriculture, food and related studies, Mickey Mouse.
No, but what
finally, sport and exercise science. Surely that's a Mickey Mouse.
That's moving in that direction.
Heading towards Mickey Mouse.
That's moving in that direction.
Britain is sports mad. You need sports scientists.
Yes, but a university degree in it?
Really?
This is
you want people to know what they're doing, don't you?
Coming back to Jonathan's earlier point about saying, are we going to move back into the 1950s? My own personal view is we move not all the way back there, but I think we've got far too many people going to university today, doing far too many degrees which are not of benefit to them in their careers in the years to come. And, of course, they're paying for student loans, and I know as an employer I'm having to deduct from their pay all the time the student loan payments. But the key issue is what use are many of these degrees to them in their lives ahead? And the answer is limited use. And although there's a student loan involved, the government is still subsidising it.
Well, the bottom line is you don't know what you're going to need until you need it. So it's difficult to work out whether you're going to need the degree you've gone for or not, unless it is. Sorry, can I finish? Unless, of course, be quiet. Unless, of course, it's a vocational course. Right, just coming up to 43 minutes after 3 o'clock. How about this? The Lib Dems have attacked the government's record on health and are promising to reverse £1 billion of Conservative cuts. And the party says that it would fund local services by cracking down on tax evasion. However, the Tories are pledging to fund more GPs but removing managers and senior staff, saving reportedly over £500,000 per year. And this comes as the Telegraph revealed today that doctors are quitting the NHS over fears of the Labour Party's tax raid on pensions. All the meanwhile, Labour pledged to decrease NHS waiting times with 40,000 more evening and weekend appointments each week. Right, Jonathan and Gary, what are your thoughts? I'm going to start with you. Which party gets your vote in terms of their direction with the NHS?
Generally the Conservative Party. But what I would say also is when any party at all starts talking about tax evasion, clamping down on it, I'm extremely suspicious. Tax evasion is illegal, and there are plenty of people working at HMRC who are trying to deal with it. They get it confused with tax avoidance, which is perfectly legal, assuming you've got accountants who can advise you on this. But what may need to happen in this area might be the law on tax needs to be changed.
Well, what is it about the Conservative Party that you are thinking their plan for NHS is better?
They have historically been more efficient in terms of the way money is spent. I'm very concerned about the Labour Party generally in terms of its plans to spend money, which is often unfunded.
Have you counted how many health ministers the Conservatives have had over the last 5 years?
I'm saying generally. I'm not saying just in the last 5 years. I'm going back to the time of Margaret Thatcher, that we have in the past tried to be efficient, but spending on the NHS is out of control. At £182 billion a year is what we're spending, and I think there needs to be a major firm of management consultants going in there.
They have been in charge of it, though, for the last 14 years.
Yes,
and in that time, you had 2.5 million people on waiting lists in 2010, and now you have 7.5 million people, 3 times as many. You look at the graphs over sort of the last 30 years, and you can see that sort of after 1997, waiting times went down. Then suddenly something happened in 2010. They shot up again. Also, the number of people waiting for it was the waiting list, the waiting times. So in terms of waiting times, so a great number of people having to wait longer than I think 18 weeks. To start their treatment. That number is much higher now than it was when the Conservatives came to power. Look, I think you'd expect that the NHS is always going to be more of a Labour priority than a Conservative one.
Why do you think that?
It's not necessarily.
It's a Labour creation. It was opposed from its very beginning by the Conservative Party. That's not to say that Conservative.
Well, wasn't it Tony Blair? I mean, who brought in PFI? And wasn't it your friend Tony Blair? So I'm
maybe you don't thrilled that you think I'm friends with Tony Blair.
But with regard to the fact that you're saying that the Labour Party are this, that and the other, I'm saying that wasn't it him who brought in PFI? I mean, that's like a privatisation kind of model within the health service, which isn't really, if you are saying that the Labour Party are more into the NHS, that's a very kind of commercial model.
I think that there are real questions to ask about the private model, and sort of Wes Streeting has obviously made no bones about the fact that he wants to see a big role for the private sector. Now, look.
One second, Jonathan. We'll be back in a moment. We're back in a moment, just after this break. We're frozen on air.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, there'll still be plenty of sunshine to end the weekend, but from Monday it is going to be turning a little bit cloudier. For today, though, we've still got plenty of high pressure building across the UK, which is dominating the weather. Notice the frontal system moving into the northwest and a slight squeeze in the Isobar, so turning a little bit breezier across Scotland. For the evening, though, still plenty of late evening sunshine across central and southern parts of the UK. Turning cloudier from the north, though, with some rain and drizzle moving into the northwest, and this could be a little bit heavy across northwestern hills. For most, though, quite a cloudy and mild night on offer. Most towns and cities not really dropping below double digits, but a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the very far south. So a brighter start across the south, but it is generally going to be clouding over through the course of the morning. Largely dry, but we will start to see some rain and drizzle feed into northern parts of Wales and parts of northern England. And quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and the rest of northern England, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle, but generally brightening up across parts of Aberdeenshire, though we will start to see some showers move in from the west across the Northern Isles. So a bit of a mixed picture to start the new working week, but generally is going to be quite a cloudy picture as well, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle moving into the northwest. By the time, though, we reach the afternoon, we will start to see some sunshine poke through the cloud, particularly across Scotland, where we will see plenty of sunshine, though quite a brisk breeze, which is going to take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. And generally, temperatures are going to be slightly lower tomorrow, but where you do catch the sunshine in any sheltered spots across Scotland, it should still be feeling pleasant and warm. Now into the evening, still plenty of cloud, which means it's going to remain fairly mild, but turning a little bit cooler across those clearer spells in Scotland, and still plenty of showers feeding into the Northern Isles. And for next week, it is generally a cloudier picture, still fairly dry across the south, but some rain and showers in the north, and feeling a little bit cooler here too.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. Apologies for that. I think somebody unplugged something. Coming up, Nana's Niggle, I'm going to ask you whether Britain has lost its greatness with all the things that have gone on in the UK. But loads still to come. Joining me, I've got Jonathan Liss and also Gary Mond. Now, before the break, we were talking about the party's policies on the NHS. Jonathan and Gary, we were talking about that. Final thoughts on the party? You were talking. We'll just finish with you.
I was just saying about the private provision issue. I think that there's a difference between we have an emergency, we need anyone we can get to help us with the current backlog, just as we did during COVID. The government used private providers, and there were very few complaints about that. But I think there's a difference between doing that and having it baked into your NHS policy, because a lot of people will see that the NHS should not be in the business of using private companies which are profitable.
A lot of places, so you go to Australia, it's a combination of the two, and even the NHS they have their own private sections. So in order to get rid of this backlog, that would literally be the only way they're going to do it, isn't it? So I'm not sure why that would be unwise.
I think there's, as I say, I think there's a compromised position where if you need to do it, then that should be like with a very narrow time limit on it. But I don't think it's appropriate for the future of the NHS to be using private provision, to be using public money to fund profit-making organisations.
I disagree. I think that the more we can get the private sector involved, the better. We're in a situation now where the NHS is costing us between £3,000 and £4,000 for every man, woman and child in this country. We need a help. And if the private sector can help, it should be taken advantage of.
I was going to say, my private insurance doesn't cost me that. So the point is that the NHS is actually way more expensive than any private
Nana,
cover.
if there was an emergency, you need to go to an A&E.
I'm not complaining. I'm paying twice is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the NHS is more expensive than a private provider, which they need to look at that. But what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. Finally, the Prime Minister has pledged that state pensions will never be taxed in a policy being dubbed as a triple lock plus. Health Secretary Victoria Atkins claimed that the Labour Party had been silent about their plans for pensions. However, the Mirror has reportedly today said that Rishi Sunak had warned pensioners that they will be hit by a £1,000 retirement tax if Labour wins power. So, Gary Mond, your thoughts? Triple plus lock, or whatever they're doing?
My thoughts are there has really been an unofficial contract between every man and woman who's worked in their lives over the last 50 to 70 years, and now that they're pensioners, that they expect to get a pension because of all the monies they paid into national insurance contributions going back decades. And when they see that sum of money that they're getting gets reduced or deducted from in any way, they feel they will have been cheated and they would be right.
Jonathan Liss.
I think it's an extraordinary thing for the government to be saying that Labour is planning a tax raid on pensions. That was literally the Tory policy until a week ago. The only reason that anyone is talking about pensioners having to pay tax is because the government has frozen the personal allowance for the last, I think, 5 years and plans to do so for another 5 years. It's completely outrageous that this policy exists. In the 1970s, you had it baked into law that the personal allowance would rise with inflation. That policy has been ditched just the time as we are getting record inflation. And so what you're having now is more people being dragged into tax. This is not a progressive policy. This is not a socialist policy. I think that the very poorest paid, which includes pensioners, should be taken out of tax altogether. The way to do that is not by making two classes of citizens where pensioners get a special deal. It's by increasing the personal allowance so that no one will have to pay tax if they're being paid such a small sum of money.
Well, this is a very big question. Actually, on one point, I actually agree with Jonathan. We should have raised personal allowances. We're taxed far too much, and one of the ways we could have reduced that would have been to raise personal allowances to take more and more people out of tax. And it's tragic that we haven't done so.
Well, it'll be interesting who gets your votes. Let me know, gbnews.com/your say. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, my Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking which party's plan gets your vote for migration. Next up, though, Nana's niggle. And today I'm asking, has Britain lost its greatness? The election, the royal family, schools, everything seems to be going to hell in a handcart. Nothing seems to be great anymore. But who do you blame? All of that on the way. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, there'll still be plenty of sunshine to end the weekend, but from Monday it is going to be turning a little bit cloudier. For today, though, we've still got plenty of high pressure building across the UK, which is dominating the weather. Notice the frontal system moving into the northwest and a slight squeeze in the Isobar, so turning a little bit breezier across Scotland. For the evening, though, still plenty of late evening sunshine across central and southern parts of the UK. Turning cloudier from the north, though, with some rain and drizzle moving into the northwest, and this could be a little bit heavy across northwestern hills. For most, though, quite a cloudy and mild night on offer. Most towns and cities not really dropping below double digits, but a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the very far south. So a brighter start across the south, but it is generally going to be clouding over through the course of the morning. Largely dry, but we will start to see some rain and drizzle feed into northern parts of Wales and parts of northern England. And quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and the rest of northern England, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle, but generally brightening up across parts of Aberdeenshire, though we will start to see some showers move in from the west across the Northern Isles. So a bit of a mixed picture to start the new working week, but generally it's going to be quite a cloudy picture as well, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle moving into the northwest. By the time, though, we reach the afternoon, we will start to see some sunshine poke through the cloud, particularly across Scotland, where we will see plenty of sunshine, though quite a brisk breeze, which is going to take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. And generally, temperatures are going to be slightly lower tomorrow, but where you do catch the sunshine in any sheltered spots across Scotland, it should still be feeling pleasant and warm. Now into the evening, still plenty of cloud, which means it's going to remain fairly mild, but turning a little bit cooler across those clearer spells in Scotland, and still plenty of showers feeding into the Northern Isles. And for next week, it is generally a cloudier picture, still fairly dry across the south, but some rain and showers in the north, and feeling a little bit cooler here too.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We organise.
Good afternoon, hello, and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also GB News senior political editor Nigel Nelson. Coming up, Nana's niggle today. Has Britain lost its greatness? The election, the royal family, the army, nothing seems to be great anymore. But whose fault is it? Then my outside guest, she's a mystery. She's an actress, with a notable presence in every major UK soap over the past 3 decades. She's an author, a producer and a voice artist. She's done it all. Can you guess who she is? There's a little clue on the screen. Coming up at my mini debate, Reform UK's Nigel Farage is reportedly already planning for life after the election. The party's honorary president is hoping for a Tory wipeout so he can absorb the party and transform the right into his own image. But is this a good move for British politics? But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. It's just after 4 o'clock. We'll start with a roundup of today's election news. And migration is at the forefront of Labour's campaigning today after accusing the Conservatives of having repeatedly broken their promises. Sir Keir Starmer's promising to reduce the number if he wins the general election, with new laws to train British workers and plug gaps in the job market. Speaking to The Sun, he said last year's net migration figure of 685,000 people has to come down. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has refused to put a time frame or set a specific target on that promise.
Well, net migration has trebled in the last 5 years under the Conservatives. One of the biggest drivers of that has been work migration. We're not setting a target, a specific target on it. And the reason for that is partly because the Conservatives have just effectively ripped up all the targets that they've set over many years. They've discredited the whole process. But also, more importantly, because there are short-term factors that can affect the numbers. And what we think instead is we need to have a long-term approach that is about bringing net migration down and tackling the failings in the system.
Meanwhile, the Conservatives are focusing on the NHS in their campaigning today. They're promising 100 new GP surgeries in England if Rishi Sunak returns to power, and to also modernise 150 others to help make appointments more accessible. The party's also pledging to expand their Pharmacy First scheme. Those plans would, they say, be paid for by cutting the number of NHS managers back to pre-pandemic levels. Health Secretary Victoria Atkins says they're working to make the NHS better.
My job as Health Secretary, for example, is to explain our vision for our NHS, which is to reform it to make it faster, simpler and fairer. And some of the announcements I have today concerning GP surgeries, concerning Pharmacy First and community diagnostic centres are the ways that we will help deliver that over the coming years. We are going to fund this. It's fully funded. We're going to fund it partly through a reduction of managers in the NHS.
And in Scotland, the SNP have launched their election campaign in Glasgow, accusing Labour and the Conservatives of failing Scotland. First Minister John Swinney told a crowd that people in Scotland want rid of the what he called disastrous, chaotic Conservative government. He also spoke about independence under the SNP, saying that it would allow the country to make its own decisions and to enhance the lives of Scottish people.
And it's the people of Scotland I want to speak to directly today as we set out our message. Let me make this commitment to the people of Scotland. I am here to serve you all. I am here to work hard to win your trust and your confidence. I am here to give everything I have to secure the best future for our country.
Well, in other news today, the Metropolitan Police has confirmed that 56 people were arrested at Wembley last night. At the Champions League final, thousands of football fans were at the stadium to watch Real Madrid beat Borussia Dortmund. Police say 5 were arrested for pitch invasion and dozens of others for attempting to breach security. The FA has now confirmed no one who tried to get into the stadium without a ticket was successful. There's division in Israel over the proposed ceasefire deal to end the war in Gaza. Demonstrations broke out overnight in Tel Aviv, one against the government and the other calling for the release of hostages. Protesters want a deal to be agreed that would see the return of Israelis kidnapped by Hamas in October last year. 2 senior right-wing ministers in Israel have threatened to quit and to bring down the coalition government if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agrees to the US brokered deal. North Korea has launched what's being described as a bizarre barrage of balloons filled with rubbish, cigarette butts and suspected animal waste floating towards its southern neighbour. More than 700 balloons have been found in various parts of South Korea so far, with chemical and explosive clearance teams dispatched to recover debris. In Seoul, the South Korean government are calling it a dirty provocation from the north. However, Pyongyang says it's in retaliation for defectors and activists who often send their own inflatables across the border, containing leaflets, food, medicine and USB sticks loaded with K-pop videos. In a historic first, China has successfully landed a spacecraft on the dark side of the moon. The unmanned Chang'e 6 lunar probe is exploring a region that no other country has ever managed to reach and is on a mission to collect rock and soil samples. The European Space Agency says it's a mean feat given there's no line of sight for communication, making robotic landings there more challenging. And finally, David Beckham has been bonding with King Charles over bees. The former England football captain compared beekeeping tips with the monarch as he was named the ambassador for the King's Foundation. The charity offers programmes to teach traditional skills and aims to promote urban regeneration and sustainable food production. David Beckham says he's excited to help raise awareness of the charity's work. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. For more, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, more from Nana.
Thank you, Sam. It's just coming up to 8 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Great Britain. I love this country. But with the whiff of the general election in the air, I'm looking at the state of it, and it can't all be blamed on one political party. But many of the great institutions that made this country great are crumbling before my very eyes. Britain pretty much colonised the world. Whether you view this as a good or bad thing, we created an empire. We were a superpower, innovators in the world of shipbuilding and aviation. We had an army to die for. But look at us now. And please, before you say Brexit, we did all of that and we didn't even have an EU then. Now, many countries, namely the US, no longer see us as a leading military power. Can you blame them? We can't even call our army an army because we have so few soldiers. This once great institution is falling apart before our very eyes. Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Crawford, who served in the army for 20 years and often appears on my show, called our tank fleet embarrassingly small, and that it would be wiped out in 2 weeks in a war with Russia. He warned that our armed forces are no longer regarded as a Tier 1 military power by the US. It's embarrassing. He also pointed out the decline in the equipment, like the number of battle tanks. The army are planning to purchase 148, but in Ukraine, the Russians, well, they've roughly lost about 3,000 over the last 2 years. How does that honestly compare? Even the monarchy, one of the most stable institutions in this country, and indeed the world, is in a tough predicament. Another thing that puts the great in Great Britain. Both the King and Catherine have cancer. Catherine is to be the next Queen. We need her. Meghan and Harry are taking pot shots from the sidelines, having chosen to step down and are going on faux royal tours. Garner is apparently next on their list. And within the household itself, there are very few working royals left. Prince Andrew was forced to step down over his association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. There was the whole Virginia Giuffre stuff, which he's denied all charges and was not found guilty of anything, but shelled out a load of cash for. The optics really weren't good since that interview with Emily Maitlis. Things have just gone from bad to worse for Andrew. Apparently, the King now wants him to move out of the 30-bedroom Royal Lodge, which he shares with his ex, Sarah Ferguson, and into Frogmore Cottage, where Meghan and Harry used to live. Ironically, whilst Andrew is fighting to stay as a working royal, those two chucked it all away, and Andrew has been told to downsize. Other institutions like the NHS, once the envy of the rest of the world, has now become something to avoid. Our schools and colleges, once considered the diamond standard that many countries would try to emulate, now being overtaken. And as for our political parties, which another world ago had leaders love them or hate them, like Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady, and Tony Blair, who could sell snow to the Eskimos, we've got lacklustre, charismaless politicians who change their mind with the wind. The political elites have made a mockery of this country over the past few decades, and whoever gets elected has a serious job on their hands. Good luck with that. Oh, cheer up, people, it's not that bad. Before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking which party's plan gets your vote on migration. The Tories are pushing their controversial plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. Labour aims to reduce reliance on foreign labour by training unemployed Britons for roles in care and construction and engineering, and also the Border Force Command. And Reform proposes at higher national insurance rates for businesses employing foreign workers. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking which party plan gets your vote on migration. Then at 4:50, it's Worldview. We cross live to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Duddridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast, to get the latest on Donald Trump's presidential campaign after he's found guilty of falsifying business records. Plus, the House Speaker says Supreme Court could overturn Trump's verdict. But what do you think? At 5, it's Outside. She's an actress, these are your clues, appearing on nearly every UK soap and plays a big role, championing in causes like anti-bullying, homelessness and lots of other things. Can you guess who she is? She's coming up in the next hour. Remember, send me your thoughts at gbviews.com/your say. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also GBNews senior political editor Nigel Nelson. Smile, Nigel. You look very serious there. What was that about?
Was I serious? I was trying to smile. Obviously, my smile is serious.
You started with a very serious look, and then it sort of morphed into a smile. Well, it's good to see you, Nigel. Might as well kick things off with you. I'm looking at all the political parties. I don't really have any allegiance to any of them. I'm looking and I'm thinking of the last 2 decades or so, they have literally wrecked this country. That's what I'm seeing.
Well, I think that what has actually wrecked the country in a sense that's made Britain not as great as it was is simply the Second World War. We really were bankrupted by that. And you mentioned colonisation, for instance, and we had to pull back from all the colonies after that. We really couldn't manage to either afford it or really stay there. We, for instance, in 1948, we had to pull out of Palestine because we had so much trouble trying to control, in those days, it was Jewish terrorists that we were having the problems with. So I think Britain had to sort of contract because the Second World War basically bankrupted us.
So you're saying it's not really the fault of any of these politicians at all, it's just the war?
Well, I mean, the NHS might be the fault of politicians.
It is.
There's a whole host of things within that. Schools may well be. What I'm saying is that when we were a world power, we lost that through the Second World War.
Danny Kelly.
Well, the clue there is the World War. Lots of countries are at war, so we should be on a parity when it comes to being bankrupt, although we were more heavily involved, potentially, than other countries. 1948 was a dispute. We were with the French, we went against the United Nations, or whatever the equivalent was back then, and the Yanks hated us for it. So we went unilaterally or bilaterally. That was a mistake. As far as Britain being great, I think Britain is great. Now, we may not be a Tier 1 military power anymore, but I think we've got, and I'm not being overly jingoistic, but I think if you've got 70,000 troops, I think they're the elite troops. So I think if the Yanks are dismissing us as not Tier 1, believe me, they'd be on the phone first to us. The Americans often say how great we are, and we're top tier when it comes to our fighting abilities. We may not be a top tier military because we haven't got the numbers. The tanks is worrying. If you look at Ukraine, one of the reasons that the Russians have lost so many tanks is because those particular tanks are Cold War era, and they're simply substandard by modern tank battlefields, and they're particularly prone and vulnerable to just imploding, whereas Western tanks aren't. But I defer to the military guy who said that he was worried. So if a military guy is worried about our ability to fight, but then we're part of NATO and we keep paying our 2.5%, the Yanks are on top of that because Donald Trump famously said, look, unless you all start paying your 2.5%, I'm pulling out. Why should the Yanks subsidise the rest?
I don't know whether that is a realistic safety net, even though it's great that they would potentially come out in force to assist if any NATO ally gets hurt or, gets attacked. But you've got to remember that Vladimir Putin is there tempting to see what we'll do. And if we do not respond, so say he goes and tries to invade, say, Finland, or because they're joining us, aren't they? They're part of NATO, or one of the other countries that want our part of NATO, or say Poland, he might tempt and see what we do. If we do nothing, do nothing,
that's right,
because we're worried, because if we get involved, then what is NATO?
Well, we won't do nothing.
Well, we might though.
We might do.
We might. Remember when that missile went into Poland? OK, we did investigate to find out that it was actually Ukrainian missile.
Yeah, that's important.
And that was wise for us to do that. But, and it's good that we didn't go all guns blazing, but it's quite interesting that had that not been, I wonder what we would have done.
Well, I mean, the whole point about the NATO treaty is that an attack on one is an attack on all. So should Putin be stupid enough to move into a NATO country, we will have a major European war, and with America weighing in on our side.
But he might do the thing threatening with nuclear war, and nobody wants that.
I'm not convinced we will. I think he's going to test us. So let's just say he encroached on Poland. Let's just hypothesise for 50 miles. I just said, OK, that's all I'm going. We're not going any further. I'm just reclaiming 50 miles of our old Soviet Union empire. That's all. We're not doing anything more. Now, I don't think NATO would then start a world war over that because it's mutually assured destruction. And nobody wants to be mutually assured that you're going to be destructed.
But you could have a conventional war. You're absolutely right. I mean, our biggest offence in this country is Trident.
Yeah.
And so Russia knows that if they attack, we've always got Trident there. Each submarine has got the power of 8 Hiroshimas tucked aboard. So Russia would pay a huge penalty for that.
But they might.
I think a conventional war is more likely.
But they might try an attack, and then if we then do nothing, because they may threat again with the nuclear side of things, which is what Putin appears, that's been his behaviour so far, then will NATO go in? I'm not so sure they would.
Well, I think that so far, Putin's actually been very careful not to cross the line.
Well, he has, but he might try and tempt to see whether we actually act unilaterally, which I'm not so sure we will.
We are ratcheting up a stage. If America allows American weapons to be used by Ukraine against targets within Russia, that does take it to a different level.
Well, that's what's happening, so that will be interesting to see. But the bottom line is, yes, we think that we've got NATO and all that, but I'm not so sure, especially having watched some of the nations together, how they behave. So I think it's almost a flawed construct. I'm not sure it would work.
I don't think NATO will disintegrate. I think all 28 countries will fight. But my point is that if Putin tests us, we may just decide to let him get away with it because the alternative is not worth thinking about. Just a little small test.
And just to say, I do think this country is great, but what I'm saying is that I think that it has been actively wrecked by a lot of the politicians from all parties across the board with some of their policies, their behaviours, and I find this whole thing quite concerning.
Well, I mean, there are certain areas where I do think...
That was just the end.
Oh, was it the end? I'm sorry. You were wrapping us up.
Ending?
I noticed the definite punctuation there now.
This is the end.
Definite punctuation.
Right, well, what do you think? Please get in touch. I'd love to get your thoughts. gbnews.com/you'll say. I'll read some of those after the break. If you just joined me, welcome. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up in Worldview, we'll cross live to speak to Paul Duddridge, host of the Politics People podcast, and get the latest stateside. Next, though, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking which party's plan gets your vote on migration. I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Which party gets your vote on migration?
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Apparently alcohol abuse is costing England £27 billion a year. I mean, in fairness, that's the price of 2 rounds in London, Nicholas.
Yeah, tell me about it. Not that I'm a big consumer of alcohol. I'm very Mediterranean in my consumption. But revealed, alcohol abuse costs soar to £27 billion a year. So this cost basically encompasses a variety of aspects, from health-related problems, so the cost on the NHS, lack of productivity, people who lose their jobs, social services, and all that. And of course, it has been on the rise, 37% more compared to last time this was studied in 2003. So now Institute of Alcohol Studies and some other groups are pushing or asking for tougher taxes and tougher regulation. But is that the solution? Like in ancient Rome, they said, in medium stat virtus, like moderation, virtue is in moderation. And again, if they're going to raise the price, people like myself or yourself who are moderate consumers, pardon?
You're going to turn to heroin. Because it'll become... I mean, well, this is what's happened in Scotland.
It becomes unaffordable, so...
Yeah, in Scotland, they had minimum unit alcohol pricing, and so it pushes up the cost of getting off your tree for your average Scottish ne'er-do-well who likes to sit on a bus stop and drink a bottle of cider. So instead, they're turning to street drugs, which are cheaper by comparison.
That is just terrible. I like that the alcohol industry have come back on this. A guy called Matt Lambert, who's the chief executive of the Portman Group, and they represent the alcohol industry. And he says that the IAS, that's the group who've created this, have failed to take into account the significant direct economic contribution of the alcohol industry to the wider economic and social benefits of moderate and responsible alcohol consumption. Well, it's so true, isn't it? We've got a declining birth rate. We need people to get drunk and chat each other up.
Yeah.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
into account...
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine. I forgive you. You're here now. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking which party's plan gets your vote on migration policy. Now, I'll run through some of them. So the Labour Party, their approach was unveiled by the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. It focuses on reducing reliance on foreign labour by training unemployed Britons for jobs in care, construction and engineering. And the aim is to end the current system that incentivises businesses to recruit overseas by offering a 20% discount. In the meantime, the Tories, now they're pushing ahead with their controversial plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. Despite legal challenges and delays, yet no planes have even left the UK. And then on the other side, Reform UK, led by Richard Tice, proposes a higher national insurance rate for businesses employing foreign workers. Now, their plan aims to curb the UK's dependency on cheap overseas labour and reinvest the additional revenue in training and apprenticeships for young people. Right, so for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking which party the plans that you listen to gets your vote on migration. Of course, there are other parties as well, and we'll have a look at the Liberal Democrats' policy too. I'm joined now by human rights lawyer Harjap Singh Bangal, author and broadcaster Amy Nicol, journalist Jonathan Liss, and also Gary Mond. He's the chairman for the Jewish Assembly. Right, I'm going to start with you, Amy Nicol-Turner.
What's the question, Anna?
Oh, did you not listen? I've just done a whole lead up to it. Which party gets your vote on migration policy?
Oh, OK, right. So to me, the definition of madness, as Einstein said, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And if we look at every time people have voted for the Conservatives with a hope that it would lower migration, it's only got worse. The numbers have only got higher. So I think just from a purely rational and practical perspective, it's got to be the Labour Party, because they seem to have a real plan that will work and will deal with larger numbers of people and address the problem more holistically, rather than just demonising a small percentage of migrants. I really think that the way that they deal with the issue has a lot more dignity to it. I think that it's bringing a bit of decency back into the debate. They're not using it as a political football. They're thinking practically. When you mentioned Yvette Cooper's suggestion about tackling the skills shortages, because why is this number with legal migration going up, 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 up? It's because the list of shortages in certain areas are so great. The construction rates, the shortages has tripled over the past few years. Engineering has doubled over the past few years. So if we can train our own people, then that's brilliant, isn't it?
Well,
on the front of...
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting plan. Gary Mond.
The irony is that there are elements of all three of those proposals that actually have got some attraction. Certainly, I was a great supporter of Suella Braverman when she was Home Secretary, and the notion then was essentially to stop the boats. She didn't succeed because she had a lot of barriers put in her way, and I would like to see her policy renewed. I do support the idea of reducing net migration with better training, if that can be done. It's not a bad idea. And also the Reform UK's idea of actually increasing employers' national insurance contributions for overseas workers, I would also agree with that too.
And also, the Keir Starmer talked about a border command. I mean, how did that idea land on you, Gary?
I think that we need to do all in our power to stop illegal migration. As for legal migration, we ought to have something done much more formally, particularly going for something along the lines of what the Australian points system has been. We have been in a complete mess on the whole issue of immigration for many years.
OK, I'm going to go to you, Jonathan Liss.
Well, I am certainly no fan of the Conservative migration policy, which has failed even on its own metrics. The Conservatives are desperate to distract attention from the fact that obviously migration has gone up, net migration has gone up under their watch. That's partly for entirely good reasons. That's because if students still want to come to British universities, the Conservatives are boasting about having fewer foreign students coming to our universities. They help prop up the university sectors, which is one of Britain's remaining success stories. It makes no sense at all to stop foreign students from coming here. But Labour is still aping the Conservatives' rhetoric on the boats. Look, obviously, the small boats are a problem. That's a problem for the people who are getting on the boats as much as anything. If we had a humane migration policy which allowed safe and legal routes into this country, that allowed processing centres to be set up in France, for example, so asylum seekers could actually have their asylum claims processed in France before coming here, that would actually end the smuggling trade overnight and actually be a humane result. So Labour, I'm voting for Labour in the election, but certainly not on their migration policy, which I'd have to support the Greens.
Oh, really interesting. Harjap Singh Bangle, are these pledges in terms of, is it realistic when they're talking about stopping the boats and dealing with modern slavery laws and things like that? I mean,
let's have a look.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the facts now. Right, the facts are that Conservatives talk the talk but have not walked the walk. They've not stopped the boats. The boats weren't a problem before, but they've all become a problem now, and migration has gone up. So do we trust anything they say? They can't get a flight off to Rwanda. Pretty much the public mind might be made up on that. Labour most definitely have grabbed a great idea in stopping the gangs. That is definitely one problem that needs to be solved. These gangs, which have been operating for 20 years from the French coast, sending people to the Kent coast, the same route, same method, yet we can't catch them because despite our elite units, they're 10 steps ahead of us. I don't believe that for a second. If we can catch bin Laden and Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein holed up in their strongholds, we can't catch these gangs operating on these shores. It just does not make sense. The safe routes definitely needs to be an option. Italy has done the same with Albania. It's just done a deal to open a processing centre there. Why haven't we opened one with our neighbours when France actually offered this to us when Priti Patel was Home Secretary, and we refused it? We refused a safe processing centre. That will stop at least some, if not all, people crossing the channels. I don't believe in punishing British businesses at all, or or British homeowners or anything like that. Why are we punishing British businesses? What we should have been doing is training our own. At the same time, once our own are trained, then by all means put caps on foreigners coming over to take that over. However, in the last 14 years, and especially since Brexit, we were promised that our own would be trained. A gap still remain in hospitality, in construction, and also in the care sector. Now, you can't put a cap on the care sector because that will crumble in virtually months if we do that. And we're already seeing the effects of the policy of not allowing their dependents to come over because carers just aren't choosing to come here anymore. So don't our own. Let's have a mixture and a sensible policy. And I think all three parties are missing the ball here. We might need an amalgamation. And let's talk to the people, British businesses. Why we punish them with further tax? We already charge extra £1,000 per year per worker to a British business to call them over. On top of that, they have to pay $38,700 to a person just to call them over to work here. And a junior doctor only gets 32.5. So
I think that this conversation is quite difficult to have when we're talking about irregular migration and legal migration in one debate, because you can agree with, like Jonathan said, certainly with the Labour policy on legal migration, whereas I too would say the Greens policy with the safe and legal routes is a lot better, but it's hard to talk both of the things at the same time.
Well, what about the Liberal Democrats then? Because they're fighting for fair, effective immigration system. They want to scrap the Conservatives' hostile environment and instead invest in officers, training and technology to tackle smuggling, trafficking and modern slavery. They want to transfer powers over to work visas, overseas students and asylum from the Home Office to their other departments and establish a new sort of arm-length unit, a bit like the Labour Party, it sounds like. I mean, they're all on it, but if you had to sort of decide and choose one out of those parties, which one would get your vote? Jonathan Liss.
Well, as I said, I would support the Green Party because they are unabashedly pro-immigration. And I think that Labour has been very reticent to make the case for immigration over the last few years. I think that's regrettable. Keir Starmer famously pledged in 2020 to defend free movement as we left the EU. That sadly didn't happen. I think that was a great loss, actually, to British people. But, that argument has now ended. But I think that we do need to separate these issues, as, we were just saying about sort of, regular and irregular migration. It's only illegal migration because the government has made it illegal. The government could make it legal for people to come in here
What,
on registered vessels and then to claim asylum, which is an absolute human right recognised under international
you might
law.
find that you exacerbate the problem doing it that way. Gary Mond, well, just name your party. Which one do you think has the best deal in terms of migration, both legal and illegal?
Well, I think the Conservative Party under Suella Braverman, if they have her policies and they actually are implemented, that will be the optimum policy.
OK. Amy Nicol.
I think it would definitely be Labour. It would not be the Tories. Look at the results of the last 14 years. They speak for themselves. And the people agree with me because for one of the first times, perhaps in recent history anyway,
the people have agreed with you.
On this channel, perhaps, polling is putting Labour ahead specifically on immigration policy.
OK. Hardeep Singh Bangal, if you were to pick one out of the...
I think it's got to be Labour. And I think why? Because they're talking sensible. We've seen the Conservatives in action. They haven't done it. They've dropped the ball on this. Are the other parties, according to the polls, going to get in? Doesn't really matter. It's a moot point. It looks as if Labour are running away with the election. It probably will be Labour's policies. So let's see what Keir Starmer can do.
Well, it'll be interesting what happens then if the Labour Party do win the next general election, because I think they'll have a sea of boats coming across with the good weather. Hardeep Singh Bangal, thank you very much. Also, Amy Nicol Turner, Jonathan Liss and also Gary Mond. Really good to talk to you. Thank you for your views. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, we will continue with the Great British Debate. And I'm asking which party plan gets your vote on migration policy that is both legal and illegal. You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Danny Kelly and Nigel Nelson, still to come. My outside guest will talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. My guest has a notable presence on every major UK soap over the past 3 decades. He's an author, a producer, a voice artist, loads of things. Wonder Birds, there's a big clue there. Can you guess who she is? First, let's get your latest news headlines.
Just after 4:30, the top stories from the newsroom this afternoon. Migration is being included in Labour's manifesto, with the party promising to reduce the number if it wins the upcoming general election in July. Sir Keir Starmer says he'll introduce new laws to train British workers to plug gaps in the job market and to strengthen anti-exploitation laws. Speaking to The Sun on Sunday, he said last year's net migration figure of 685,000 people has to come down. He didn't, though, set a timeframe or put a specific target on that promise. Meanwhile, the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats are focusing on the NHS today in their campaigning. The Tories say they'll build 100 new GP surgeries and modernise 150 others to help make appointments more accessible. The party has also pledged to build 50 new diagnostic centres. Those plans would, they say, be paid for by cutting the number of NHS managers to pre-pandemic levels. The SNP has launched its election campaign this afternoon, accusing Labour and the Conservatives of failing Scotland. Leader and First Minister John Swinney says they're the only party which will put Scotland's needs first. And his representative in Westminster, Stephen Flynn, also told that launch event today that a vote for the SNP is a vote for Scotland. And police have made 56 arrests following the Champions League final last night as some football fans tried to force their way into the stadium and others invaded the pitch. Thousands were at Wembley to watch Real Madrid beat Borussia Dortmund. The vast majority of those arrested are still in custody. Most of the arrests were for attempts to breach security, but 5 were made after people got onto the pitch. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code there on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Well, it is officially summer, and we've got a brand new summer giveaway, £15,000 in cash, which could make your summer spectacular. Also a brand new iPhone, AirPads, and £500 that you could spend on a UK attraction of your choice. So if you love theme parks, if you love visiting stately homes, or just a spa day out, you fancy that, it could be on us. Here are the details that you need.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Right, coming up though, Worldview. We will cross live to Paul Duttridge to get the latest on what's going on in the States. Next though, we continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, who gets your vote on migration policy?
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Princess of Wales has said she's excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause, as we know, that she's closely associated with.
Yes, the task force findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood.
Well, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
I suppose it's characteristically Catherine, isn't it, to say she doesn't want to distract from this report by sort of people talking about her health. But we should start probably by saying she said she's not feeling well enough to come and talk about this in public, but sort of saying she's watching it, keeping a close eye from behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. This should not be seen as a return to work by the Princess of Wales, but I have been told she's A, read the report and B, been briefed on it. But this all stems really from her work when she started being a working member of the royal family, where she was working closely with people suffering from addiction, mental health problems. And what she found is all of these issues tend to stem from a poor start in life, so the first 5 years of a child's life. So in January 2023, she set up Shaping Us, this awareness campaign for the early years. 2 months later, she convened the Business Task Force, so 8 members of big businesses across the UK, and over a generation, that could add, as they claim, more than £40 billion to the UK economy each year. We spoke to Peter Grigg yesterday. He's the chair of Home Starts UK, a charity which supports young families. Let's hear what he said about the Princess's role in this.
She's been a real driving force behind the report and everything it's done. And when we've spent time with the Royal Foundation, what it does, it reminds everyone that this is really important work and early childhood matters, that more businesses should get involved, that more charities are out there for people who want to do more to support families and children. So it's been a wonderful experience.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome back. If you've just tuned in, where on earth have you been? It's just coming up to 40 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's election channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, let's continue with our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking which party's plan gets your vote on migration policy. Now, Labour's plan, which was introduced by the Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, aims to reduce reliance on foreign labour. Now, this is their legal migration policy by training unemployed Britons for roles in care, construction and engineering. They want to end the system that gives businesses a 20% discount for overseas and recruitment. On illegal migration, they are looking at their border command, aren't they? Keir Starmer laid his policies. He wants an elite force, a combination of all the different bodies, like the CIA and so on and so forth. Right, it's MI5, it's not the CIA, is that American? I'm thinking about America. I'm thinking about America. But anyway, so MI5 and all that kind of thing. Now, the Tories, they're pushing on with their controversial plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. That is their illegal migration policy, despite legal challenges and delays with no flights, which haven't taken off. None have taken off yet. Legally, they want the right people for the job, so that is in terms of skills and so on and so forth. So I think theirs is more a point-type structure. Reform, now led by Richard Tice, they're proposing for legal migration, higher national insurance rates for businesses employing foreign workers. Their plans aim to reduce dependency on cheap overseas labour and use the revenue for training, the apprenticeships for young people and the Liberal for young people. They are also talking for illegal migration about turning the boats back. I looked at one of their policies and it was to send them back to France. The Liberal Democrats, they're fighting a fair, effective, this is their words, a fair, effective immigration system. That's their plan that treats everyone with dignity and respect. The party states that the best way to stop these dangerous crossings, so this is illegal migration, is to provide safe and legal routes for the sanctuary of those that need it. They also talked about fair for everyone, which is their legal side of it. That's the business side. In the meantime, the Greens, they want to implement a fair and humane system of managed immigration where we treat all migrants as if they are citizens and stop any profiteering from application fees, as well as plans to dismantle the Home Office. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking which party's plan gets your vote on migration policy, both legal and illegal. Right, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also GBNews senior political editor Nigel Nelson. Danny Kelly.
I'm not convinced Keir Starmer's plan to get some sort of multi-agency dynamic to tackle the smuggling gangs. I said this a couple of weeks ago. The only reason that people are paying €3,000, €4,000, €5,000 to get on a dinghy is because it's run by the mafia, it's run by the mob. So you remove the mafia and the mob, then people will just go and source their own dinghies. They're too frightened to source their own dinghies at the moment because they know that they're going to be beaten up by the mafia. That's how it works. So remove the mob, people will just find out their own ways. And just imagine how much cheaper it would be just to buy a dinghy for €500 and get 5 people on it. So that's the reason that won't work. As far as the Greens are concerned, that just seems an incentive to anyone to come over. I am all for fair asylum and fair recognition of people in peril around the world. I'm just not convinced that everybody who claims to be in peril around the world is legitimate. I'm convinced that the majority are not legitimate. I have no way of proving this, of course I don't, but it's just a gut feeling. So I like the Rwanda plan in the sense that I think it's working. Even the threat of being deported to Rwanda seems to be working. It's gaining traction around Europe. And I think it's a shame that we're going to have an election before even one plane takes off.
Maybe that's the reason, though, perhaps, that there would be so many people coming over in the summer months with the weather the way it is, that then the plan will be tested. That's just my thoughts, that perhaps that's why. What about you, Nigel Nelson?
Well, we have to divide it into 2 bits, don't we?
Well, that's what I've done.
Yeah. So, first of all, there is no silver bullet for any of it, and that no party is going...
Is a silver bullet a good thing?
Well, if you want to stop, if you want to stay,
I was going to say,
I'm not
coming
suggesting you
towards you,
shoot
I don't think it is.
Yeah. If you want to reduce legal migration and stop people coming across on boats, then you've got to find something that's going to do it. And nobody has so far. So I think that if we take the legal migration side, Reform have got this idea that you can make it more expensive to bring cheap labour over here from abroad simply by charging 20% employer national insurance tax.
So it'll be more expensive for the employer?
Yeah, which is a nonsense. Because,
why is that a nonsense?
Well, it's a nonsense because all it does is add extra money, extra cost to the employer. At the moment, the government have done what...
Well, that's the point, isn't it? So the employers is incentivised.
Yes, but the government have already done the incentives so far. So, for instance, you mentioned the 20% discount rate for wages for a foreign worker. That went on April the 4th. So now if you bring a foreign worker over here in a shortage occupation, they must get paid the same as a British worker, so there's no benefit in getting a foreign worker. On the skilled worker visas, that increased by £12,000.
But they're trying to make a benefit to get a British worker.
Yeah.
So levelling the playing field is fine, but then you might still end up with a foreign worker. So they're trying to uneven the playing field so that it is in the favour of the British worker.
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
Then the question is, you've got to make sure there is a British worker to go and do that job. You come then to Labour's policy, which is talking about training people up for those jobs. But you still might need a foreign worker who still gets a discount. If you did a ballet dancer, is one of them as an example, a fishing boat skipper, you may have to get those from abroad.
All right, OK, well, listen, what do you think? This show's nothing without you. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's go to, Kidderminster, John Reid. John Reid, which party gets your vote on illegal and legal migration? You've got to choose one.
Yeah, OK, Nan. A straight answer from somebody who's not a politician. The people who get my vote is Labour. Now, it's not because I trust them implicitly. I don't. I don't think that everything they do is perfect. I just trust them more than I do the Tories, that's all. So in this kind of two-state race that we've got going on, we can ignore everybody else, can't we? Because they're not going to form a government, are they? It's going to be Labour or Tories who form the government, and it's likely. And I would give my vote to the Labour, not just based on migration, on the whole thing they're offering, but your question, the simple answer is...
Who would get you, in terms of migration, whose policy works better for you? So you think the Labour Party have a better policy?
I think so, yeah. I think that they need to do something, obviously, about illegal immigration. Of course they do. I really don't understand why these dinghies that people are using to come across are not turned round mid-channel.
Well, that would be reform. That's what Reform are saying. That's what they would do.
Yeah, I know that's what they say they do, but what chance have they got forming the next government to make it happen? You know, it's very low, isn't it? So... In practical terms...
You think the Labour Party's policy...
Yeah, I saw on the beaches recently where, was it gendarmes or the British police were simply putting a knife through the dinghy so that it wouldn't float. And everybody... Why they don't do... No idea.
Well, listen, John Reid, I've got to go. We've got to rush to the break. But thank you very much, John Reid. There's John Reid. He's our great British voice. What do you think? gbviews@gbnews.com/your say. Coming up, is the Labour's private school plan unravelling? Next, Worldview, we'll speak to Paul Dudridge and get the latest on what's going on stateside.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, there'll still be plenty of sunshine to end the weekend, but from Monday it is going to be turning a little bit cloudier. For today, though, we've still got plenty of high pressure building across the UK, which is dominating the weather. Notice the frontal system moving into the northwest and a slight squeeze in the Isobar, so turning a little bit breezier across Scotland. For the evening, though, still plenty of late evening sunshine across central and southern parts of the UK. Turning cloudier from the north, though, with some rain and drizzle moving into the northwest, and this could be a little bit heavy across northwestern hills. For most, though, quite a cloudy and mild night on offer. Most towns and cities not really dropping below double digits, but a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the very far south. So a brighter start across the south, but it is generally going to be clouding over through the course of the morning. Largely dry, but we will start to see some rain and drizzle feed into northern parts of Wales and parts of northern England. And quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and the rest of northern England, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle, but generally brightening up across parts of Aberdeenshire, though we will start to see some showers move in from the west across the Northern Isles. So a bit of a mixed picture to start the new working week, but generally it's going to be quite a cloudy picture as well, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle moving into the northwest. By the time, though, we reach the afternoon, we will start to see some sunshine poke through the cloud, particularly across Scotland, where we will see plenty of sunshine, though quite a brisk breeze, which is going to take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. And generally, temperatures are going to be slightly lower tomorrow, but where you do catch the sunshine in any sheltered spots across Scotland, it should still be feeling pleasant and warm. Now into the evening, still plenty of cloud, which means it's going to remain fairly mild, but turning a little bit cooler across those clearer spells in Scotland, and still plenty of showers feeding into the Northern Isles. And for next week, it is generally a cloudier picture, still fairly dry across the south, but some rain and showers in the north, and feeling a little bit cooler here too.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
52 minutes after 4 o'clock, this is GB News. We are Britain's election channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, we mentioned Kidderminster, so these are the list of all the candidates in Kidderminster. We have, for the Green Party, John Davis, Conservatives, Mark Garnier, Reform UK, Bill Hopkins, the Liberal Democrats, Shazzu Maya, for Labour, it's Vicky Smith, for the Independents, it's Lee Whitehouse. Right, well, I'm joined now by broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly and also senior GB News political editor Nigel Nelson. So we were talking about this whole issue with, you know, who looks better on the stage in terms of legal and illegal migration. And I did cut you off, so you can carry on, Nigel. What about the Liberal Democrats?
Well, and the Lib Dems do have a good idea. It's a question of how you put it into practice. What they're saying is that we should have safe and legal routes, which would then take Calais away as a draw for migrants to get across. System at the moment is that to claim asylum, you must do it on British soil. So if you do that, that just encourages people to cross the Channel, get into Dover and claim asylum when they get here. If you were able to do it in a different way, say, for instance, from refugee camps, and you're able to actually process your asylum seekers there, a bit like what Italy's doing with Albania, then that would take away the draw of Calais.
Do you think that that is true, though? Because the kind of people that will cross on a dinghy will probably cross even if there is a safe and legal route, which a lot of them are coming from countries where there are safe and legal routes.
Well, I mean, I don't think you'll ever stop the boats completely. So you're absolutely right. You may still have some people doing it, but you will reduce the trade.
Do you think, Gary, Danny?
Just to look at Reform's policy, they want to turn back the boats. Now, this is very brave. This is a big policy that Australia had a lot of success in. Now, Reform's UK's Nigel Farage will often say, look at what happened in Australia. I think Tony Abbott was the Prime Minister or something. And then he'll quite rightly say that there was a difference in between the vessels. So you got something flimsy, you got something more robust. And he says that people are just going to throw themselves in the drink. If Reform UK's policy were to work, if they had the balls to do it, then that would certainly get a lot better.
Right, thank you. Stay tuned. Loads more on the way next. Be quiet.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, there'll still be plenty of sunshine to end the weekend, but from Monday it is going to be turning a little bit cloudier. For today, though, we've still got plenty of high pressure building across the UK, which is dominating the weather. Notice the frontal system moving into the northwest and a slight squeeze in the Isobar, so turning a little bit breezier across Scotland. For the evening, though, still plenty of late evening sunshine across central and southern parts of the UK. Turning cloudier from the north, though, with some rain and drizzle moving into the northwest, and this could be a little bit heavy across northwestern hills. For most, though, quite a cloudy and mild night on offer. Most towns and cities not really dropping below double digits, but a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the very far south. So a brighter start across the south, but it is generally going to be clouding over through the course of the morning. Largely dry, but we will start to see some rain and drizzle feed into northern parts of Wales and parts of northern England. And quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and the rest of northern England, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle, but generally brightening up across parts of Aberdeenshire, though we will start to see some showers move in from the west across the Northern Isles. So a bit of a mixed picture to start the new working week, but generally it's going going to be quite a cloudy picture as well, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle moving into the northwest. By the time, though, we reach the afternoon, we will start to see some sunshine poke through the cloud, particularly across Scotland, where we will see plenty of sunshine, though quite a brisk breeze, which is going to take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. And generally, temperatures are going to be slightly lower tomorrow, but where you do catch the sunshine in any sheltered spots across Scotland, it should still be feeling pleasant and warm. Now into the evening, still plenty of cloud, which means it's going to remain fairly mild, but turning a little bit cooler across those clearer spells in Scotland, and still plenty of showers feeding into the Northern Isles. And for next week, it is generally a cloudier picture, still fairly dry across the south, but some rain and showers in the north, and feeling a little bit cooler here too.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It is 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, still to come, my outside guest. This is the mystery. Who is she? From working alongside legends like Ronnie Barker and John Cleese to starring in West End productions, she's done it all. Plus, she's a dedicated altruist, championing causes like anti-bullying and homelessness. Any more ideas that she might be? Can you guess? She'll be with me in a matter of moments. Coming up, though, the Great British Debate. I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling before our very eyes? But first, let's get an update with your weather, and then we will get some news, actually, for I think this is all. Let's get some news with...
Very good evening to you. It's just after 5 o'clock. The top stories from the newsroom, and first we'll bring you an update on the election campaign so far today. Migration is at the forefront of Labour's campaigning after accusing the Conservatives of having repeatedly broken their promises. Sir Keir Starmer's promising to bring net migration down if he wins the general election, with new laws that he says would train British workers and plug gaps in the job market. Speaking to The Sun, he said that last year's net migration figure of 685,000 has to come down. Well, Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has refused to put a time frame on that or set specific targets on the promise.
Well, net migration has trebled in the last 5 years under the Conservatives. One of the biggest drivers of that has been work migration. We're not setting a specific target on it. And the reason for that is partly because the Conservatives have just effectively ripped up all the targets that they've set over many years. They've discredited the whole process. But also, more importantly, because there are short-term factors that can affect the numbers. And what we think instead is we need to have a long-term approach that is about bringing net migration down and tackling the failings in the system.
Meanwhile, the Conservatives say that they'd free up 20 million GP appointments by the end of the next Parliament if they return to power. They're promising 100 new GP surgeries too in England and to modernise 150 others. The party's also pledging to expand the Pharmacy First scheme. Those plans would, they say, be paid for by cutting the number of NHS managers to pre-pandemic levels. Health Secretary Victoria Adkins says they're working to make the NHS better.
My job as Health Secretary, for example, is to explain our vision for our NHS, which is to reform it to make it faster, simpler and fairer. And some of the announcements I have today concerning GP surgeries, concerning Pharmacy First and community diagnostic centres are the ways that we will help deliver that over the coming years. We are going to fund this. It's fully funded. We're going to fund it partly through a reduction of managers in the NHS.
And the SNP have launched their election campaign in Glasgow today, accusing Labour and the Conservatives of failing Scotland. First Minister John Swinney told a crowd that people in Scotland want rid of what he called the disastrous, chaotic Conservative government. He also spoke about independence under the SNP, saying it would allow the country to make its own decisions and to enhance the lives of Scottish people.
And it's the people of Scotland I want to speak to directly today as we set out our message. Let me make this commitment to the people of Scotland. I am here to serve you all. I am here to work hard to win your trust and your confidence. I am here to give everything I have to secure the best future for our country.
Well, turning away from election news to London, where the Metropolitan Police have confirmed 56 people were arrested at Wembley last night at the Champions League final. Thousands of football fans were at the stadium to watch Real Madrid beat Borussia Dortmund. Police say 5 people were arrested for pitch invasion and dozens of others for attempting to breach security there. The FA has now confirmed that no one who tried to get into the stadium without a ticket was successful. And in Israel, there is division over the proposed ceasefire deal to end the war in Gaza. Demonstrations broke out overnight in Tel Aviv, one against the government there, the other calling for the release of hostages. Protesters want a deal agreed that would see the return of Israelis who were kidnapped by Hamas in October last year. 2 senior right-wing ministers, though, have threatened to quit and to bring down the coalition government if the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agrees to that US brokered deal. North Korea has launched what's being described as a bizarre barrage of balloons filled with rubbish, cigarette butts and suspected animal waste floating towards its southern neighbour. More than 700 balloons have been found so far in various parts of South Korea, with chemical and explosive clearance teams now dispatched to recover any debris. In Seoul, the South Korean government's calling it a dirty provocation from the north. However, Pyongyang says it's in retaliation for defectors and activists who often send their own inflatables across the border, containing leaflets, food, medicine and USB sticks loaded with K-pop videos. Well, some space news for you. In a historic first, China has successfully landed on the dark side of the moon. The unmanned Chang'e 6 lunar probe is exploring a region that no other country has ever managed to reach. and is on a mission to collect rock and soil samples. The European Space Agency says it's a mean feat, given there's no line of sight for communication, making robotic landings more challenging. And finally, a couple who scooped £1 million in the lottery say they'll both continue working as police officers. That's despite their life-changing win. Graham White and his wife Catherine are planning, they say, to buy their dream home in the countryside, along with some goats and chickens. Their wish list also includes a trip to Disneyland for their children and, if they're lucky, a pet dog. The couple say that finding out that they'd won was a life-changing experience.
We were just waking up to get the kids ready for school, and we were talking. Graham was checking his phone because I'm boring to talk to, and then just out of the blue said, "Shut up a minute, I think we've won the lottery." So checked it, carried on just getting the kids ready for school, and at first we miscounted and thought 100,000 and we're still jumping up and down for that, and then we sort of stopped a second and recounted, and yeah, it was crazy. Absolutely ridiculous.
A big congratulations to Graham and Catherine. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, let's get back to Nana.
Good afternoon. This is coming up to 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel, I can hear it now, people saying, my panel and I, me and my panel. If people always do that to me, they keep sending me messages saying it's my panel and I. Me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it is yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Still to come, we will cross live to Los Angeles to speak to Paul Dudridge to get the latest on Trump, all the stuff going on with his campaign. Plus, we've got the Speaker of the House saying, of the Supreme Court, saying that should they overturn, they will overturn Trump's verdict. But what do you think? Then every Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career, to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on The Outside. And today, I'm joined by the only actress in the UK who has appeared in every major TV soap in the last 30 years as a regular character. Have you got it? Who do you think she is? Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling? A second private school has blamed Labour's tax raid for their closure, as Sir Keir Starmer has promised to charge private schools VAT, as well as business rate relief for ending that, if he comes into power after the next general election. So I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling? As ever, gbnews.com/your say. Right. So each Sunday just after 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career, to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on The Outside. And this week, my guest is an actor, a writer, producer and a voiceover artist. She started her career in television as an impressionist in Now Who Do You Do? And then went on to appear in some of the most iconic British comedy and drama programmes, such as The Two Ronnies, Holby City and Miss Marple. She worked with the likes of David Jason, Spike Milligan, John Cleese and Tracy Ullman. And currently, you can watch her in an online sensation, Wonderbirds, which she created with 3 friends, as well as having a distinguished TV, stage and voiceover career. She's also an ambassador of the National Bullying Helpline, the Retired Police Railway Dogs, and also Buses for Homeless. Who do you think she is? Did you get it? Of course, it's actor Debbie Arnold. Debbie Arnold, oh, God, you've done so... Actor.
OK, darling.
Darling.
Actor.
Yeah, I sort of feel weird saying that because you're an actress, but then we've gone gender neutral and, of course, it ends up on the male version.
Yes, they should be called actresses.
Well, that would be good, wouldn't it? Well, some of them want to be called actresses,
yeah, exactly.
to be fair.
Yes. But I just finished a show last night.
What did you finish doing?
Calendar Girls.
Oh, wow.
Getting the kit off after all these years.
All of it?
Well, yeah.
Really?
I was behind something, of course. But it was fantastic. It was at the Mill at Sonning. Have you ever been there?
I've not been there,
Oh,
no.
my God. It was magnificent. It's the best show I've ever done, with the best cast I've ever had, and the best, director, Sally. And it's when you do a job that you really love. And yesterday was the last night, and it's stopped now.
Oh no, it's all stopped. But listen, you've done so much, and you literally haven't stopped. You've been working constantly. A lot of people don't get that. Talk to me about your early life and how you came to do what you're doing.
Well, my father was an impressionist, and so when I was little, my first impression was.
Who did he do? What was his?
Well,
name?
he was a very, very big star, but he died. He had a brain tumour when he was 32.
What was his name?
Eddie Arnold. And he was just about to go to America and open the Pink Flamingo with Ethel Merman in Vegas. So it was really, really devastating and sad what happened to him.
Yeah, well, so sad to hear that.
Yeah.
But he sort of opened the path for you to go
he taught me how to
into
do
that.
impressions,
Yeah.
like how does Grandpa cough? And little things like that. And I always did funny voices. I never thought it was going to be a profession. I mean, but it was.
Who was your best voice to do?
I used to do Marilyn Monroe a lot. Blonde hair runs in my family. Gee, I guess I shouldn't use such a cheap rinse.
That's really good. So what were your first jobs in the industry?
Well, my mother remarried, and I didn't really want to, she didn't want me to go in the industry, but really there was no chance. And I got a job as a secretary in a record company, and I was so awful. I really was bad. And this guy came in and he said, excuse me, is this Terry Brown's office? And I said, yes, it is. He said, you're from my part of the world? And I said, no, I'm not. He said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Sunderland. And he
You're
went...
from Sunderland?
Yeah.
I went to university there.
Oh, well, it's a nice, as my mother would say, it's a nice place to come from, not to go to.
Really? I loved it.
Did you?
I did. It's because it was by the water, wasn't it?
Water pet,
By the water pet.
Yes, can you
Roker Park.
Roker Park?
They call it Joker Park because they never won anything.
No, they did in 1973.
Well, they did, yes.
No, don't start me up. And in 1937.
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't think I was born then.
No. Not quite. I wasn't.
Neither were you, actually. You could have been alive then.
I'm not that old.
Well, you look good on it if you are, but you're not.
No. You'd have to have wheeled me in. Yes, so anyway, I started. So Johnny said, I think you should meet the producer of Who Do You Do? And I literally went in my lunch hour to meet this producer who said, it wouldn't happen today. Yeah, you're great. You can do funny voices. You've got a series. And I went home to my mum and said, I'm giving up my secretarial job and I'm going to do impressions. And now Who Do You Do? And she went, what? And it kind of went from there.
Did it help that you were related to somebody who was famous, or did they not know?
Well, my dad had died so long before. I was only 7 when he died.
Oh.
So, and he was ill for quite a few years before, so no, they didn't know. But then that helped me, and then I realised I didn't want to be a stand-up and do impressions. And then I started just going for auditions to act. And then that's what happened. I just started getting jobs, and it was absolutely brilliant. One of the first jobs I got was Coronation Street.
Oh, I love
Because
Coronation
I used
Street.
to write to the producer every week. I used to send him poems. And he called me and he said, Debbie, please, if I give you this job, will you stop sending me poems? So I did.
And you
I
got the
it.
job. So how long were you on Coronation Street?
Well, the first time, and my first lines here, you're going to love it, my first street was to Mike Baldwin, and I had to say to him, what you are, Mag, you're as slippery as a wet welly. And I thought, if I say wet welly, my whole career... But I was sort of in and out for 18 months, and Sam Kidd, who was playing my boyfriend, so he was very old. It was the time of Dallas and Dynasty.
I loved that.
Yeah, so they thought they'd bring in an old man with a young bird. But unfortunately, working with me killed him. He died when we were shooting, so we had to go back and reshoot a lot of the stuff. And so that was that. And then at that time, I just got married to John Challis, Boys Seen Only Fools and Horses, and I was sort of his child bride as well. So, and he showed me a lot about the business, and from then I started doing lots of plays and stuff like that, and I really loved it. And then I did. I got the part opposite Omar Sharif in the West End in The Sleeping Prince, and that's where Ronnie Barker saw me and wrote me this letter saying, I've just seen you and I hope you're not going to be insulted, but I've written a part for you, and she's called Voluptua Goodbody.
Wow. You see, now this is quite impressive because you've done a lot in your life, and a lot of people don't manage to get the continuity of work all the time, which you've obviously managed, and it's very, very impressive. And the jobs that you've done have been incredible. I mean, you have been in Holby City, you've been in Miss Marple, Minder.
Now Minder. So that I love Minder. Did you love it?
I loved Minder, yes.
I love it. I loved it. And I was lucky enough to do the movie of Minder and also an episode. And it just... This Saturday, the 8th of June, was that Saturday or Sunday? That was the 8th of June. At the Cinema Museum in Kennington, we're having a Minder exhibition, a reunited
Minder exhibition.
Obviously, we can't have Dennis and George because they are in the Minder in heaven. But we've got Gary Webster, who sort of took over from Dennis. And, we're there next weekend. So come and signing autographs and talking about our time in Minder.
Well, listen, Debbie, unfortunately, your mic's going a bit funny, sadly. So we'll have to cut this brief, but hopefully we can come back to you in a moment. So stay right there. That, of course, is actor Debbie Arnold. She's amazing, isn't she? Let's quickly head over to the United States and have a quick chat with Paul Duttridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. Trump is still leading in the polls despite his guilty verdict, with the House Speaker saying that the Supreme Court should overturn the Trump verdict. Joining me now is Paul Duttridge. Paul Duttridge, talk me through what's been going on. What's been going on there? I mean, he's been found guilty. What's next?
Well, we've gone from Banana Republic to full fruit salad this week. It's good to see show trials making a comeback. What we've had, obviously, everybody knows now Trump he's a convicted felon, apparently. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, has already laid his cards on the table and said that the Supreme Court should and probably would and will overturn this conviction ultimately. It's got to go through all the appeals. We have to wait till sentencing on July the 11th. Doesn't look like he's going to get a prison sentence. He's going to be 78 years old, first offence by the time July the 11th comes around. And Judge Merchant has actually said in the proceedings leading up to this, he didn't want to interfere with the campaign. And so it's unlikely that Trump is actually going to see the inside of a cell. However, the sentencing, I think, will be everything up to the point of actual incarceration. But for Mike Johnson, who is Speaker of the House, and, you know, there's supposed to be the separation of powers in the United States, for him to come out so overtly and say the Supreme Court should overturn this, because look, this is an election, a federal election being interfered with at a local, I mean, a very local level on an accounting anomaly. And so that really does trigger a lot of fears among the federal powers in this country. And so it's great that Mike Johnson is speaking out so overtly on this.
Well, it is important because once the floodgates have opened, let's just say that Trump does win the next election. For those who have done this to him, there will be wrath, there will be response. Surely he won't be happy with it. So I think obviously it's in their interest to ensure that he doesn't win, because it does feel, just from observing here in the UK, that there's something very odd going on.
There's something very odd going on. And look, the one can of worms that they really have overlooked is like, OK, well, now we can prosecute former presidents. And there are living former presidents. And if let's say Trump doesn't win, I still think he's got a real problem. I don't think he can, but that's nothing to do with this case. You're still going to end up with a MAGA Republican Party and probably a MAGA Congress, and they will be prosecuting former presidents. And that's not just Biden, that's Obama and anybody. You can pick apart absolutely anybody's history in this country. Famously, you know, if you put a stamp on a letter and send it, it's a federal offence in this country. So it's not difficult when you have a witch hunt to find a witch.
Well, listen, Paul Duttridge, apologies, it's short and sweet, but thank you very much. That's Paul Duttridge, host of the Politics People podcast. If you just tuned in, this is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Joining me, my outside guest, Debbie. Oh, Debbie, it's so good to talk to you. We were just talking about Minder. You were saying that you worked on Minder. You've done lots of things there. Talk to me about that, because I think we lost your mic just then. And a little bit
at the Cinema
on
Museum
what you're doing now.
On the 8th of June with a Minder reunion. So it'll be great for all the Minder fans to come and see us. So
I'm trying to think, who was in Minder?
Well, George and Dennis.
George and Dennis, yes.
And then Gary Webster took over from Dennis. And then there were lots of other characters who came in and out. But I think because I was in a very funny episode where George had to pick me up. I was a hooker. He had to pick me up, but he didn't want to sleep with me. He just wanted to put me in Dennis's bed. And because he found a girlfriend, he didn't want him to have a girlfriend, so he put me in there. When they came home one night, they found me in bed. So that was it. And then I came back about, I don't know, 6 months later in the movie.
Playing a character like that. She was really, you know, my man, my Antonio.
God, could you imagine that high-pitched voice? People,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yes, exactly.
You have done a lot. It's very impressive. What would you say was the biggest highlight of your career? The best thing that you ever feel that you did?
Well, probably starring opposite Omar Sharif in
wow.
Sleeping Prince. I think, I got that part and 900 other girls went up for it. And it really was, a cattle call. But I knew from the very beginning I'd get it. And isn't that funny? You have that confidence, don't you? Yeah, no problem. Yeah. And of course, all the people that came with him, people that came to see the show. I remember knocking on my dressing room door and I said, opened it, and there was Charlton Heston.
Oh, my God.
And Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, everybody, Prince Rainier, they all came to see him, not me, of course, but they all came up to see me. You can imagine them schlepping up all these stairs. Omar was in the suite, the star suite. Where's Debbie? She's up there in the gods, But it was brilliant. It was fantastic. And then going into soaps after that, I found that really quite interesting. Having, worked in America for a little while as well after that, then went into a couple of soaps, and I thought, this is so interesting because I've met some of the biggest stars in the world, and yet in the UK here, at that time when I was in EastEnders, that was like the biggest programme. 25 million people. You couldn't walk down the street without getting jumped on.
What's happened to it?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. I watched it one time. I thought, what? That's ridiculous. It didn't make any sense. Debbie, just remind us, what are you doing now? If people want to get in touch, how can they find you and how can they get involved?
Well, I've got a new show that's coming out called Beauty Investigates with Dee Anderson, who is Dee and I are produced together. We are business partners, or shall I say, reprobates.
Reprobates? Hardly.
Yes, and Beauty Investigates is on tonight at 6 o'clock on channel 188, I think it is, or 186, I don't know, one of those channels tonight. And it's also online. And we talk about beauty treatments.
Wonderful.
And what we should have and what works and what doesn't. And that's Debbie McGee is in that with me.
Wonderful.
So so that's what I'm doing. And I'm also a producer. And Wonderbirds we're doing tomorrow, as we do it's on twice a week, so non-stop, really.
Debbie Arnold, thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming to talk to me.
Thank you, darling.
That is the brilliant Debbie Arnold. She was my outside guest. Just coming up to 23 minutes after 5 o'clock. Coming up, should Nigel Farage become the leader of the Tory party? Next, though, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling as we speak?
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to me to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
That has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, times change. You've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 26 minutes after 5 o'clock. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling? Now, a second private school has blamed Labour's tax raid for closure. Esther Starmer has promised to charge private schools 20% VAT, as well as ending the business rate relief. That's if he comes into power after the next general election. The party estimates that this will raise about £1.7 billion of funds to be spent on state schools. Bear in mind, the full school funding budget is around about £116 billion. Labour, however, have been urged to abandon its plans to charge VAT if the budget watchdog says that it will not make any money and cost the taxpayer. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling? Well, joining me now is the former Labour spokesperson James Mathewson and also head teacher Christine Caniff. Right, I'm going to start with you. James Mathewson, so we've got another private school shutting, saying that this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and you've got the OBR now suggesting to the Labour Party that it may not make any money and they'll close it down, or suggest that it's closed down if it doesn't. And you've also now got unions saying, hold on a minute, teachers saying they're scared of losing their jobs. Is this plan unravelling, James?
I hope not, is the answer. I don't think it is, looking at the wide-scale kind of scope of the plan as a whole. But I do think, you know, there has to be consultation. People have to be listened to and involved, and that includes the private school sector. I don't think they should be, you know, written off altogether and dictated to entirely. However, we do have to remember that, you know, whilst certain private schools be hit by this, and I mean, we're talking, you know, about people saying that it's the straw that broke the camel's back already. Labour aren't even in power. Labour haven't won an election yet, so it's fascinating for that to be the case already.
Well, no, if you think about it, no, parents plan ahead. No, that's you've got to be honest, but they're planning ahead, so parents will be looking at putting their kids in these schools in the coming years and months and so on and so forth, so that is why.
Has to be factored in, and private schools are businesses at the end of the day, and they have to be viable. What is it that Conservatives always say about the private sector and about, you know, the free market? You have to be a viable business. You don't have the right to exist, and it's exactly the same with private schools. They exist for profit at the end of the day, and they need to be able to support themselves, and this is just a factor of that, and that shouldn't stop us from proposing a really good policy, which overall is a really good policy and a solid policy that will benefit so many more children and help be the tide that raises all boats.
Is that true, though? Is that true? Let's go to Christine Caniff. Will this policy be of a benefit to help with the state sector?
One word, no. And today has been a really frustrating day, and it started off with Yvette Cooper with Camilla Tominey this morning, asked directly 4 times how this would work, and there was no answer at all. There is no answer because there are no plans. There's no outcomes that support this policy. Everything is going against it. The Adam Smith Institute, the national papers, the unions, the OBR. What more?
Well, it does seem, James, that everything is going against it. Also, that sector, if you imagine the mental trauma of a child having to come out of their school, especially many doing GCSEs and, you know, at very important times, it's about 500,000 kids in these schools. Surely Labour won't make the money it intended if a large portion of those, so far estimated 40,000, leave.
Yeah, but I just don't see that being the case. And if you have the money to send your children to private school, this is a luxury, remember. This is a luxury. We have a fantastic state school system in Britain, full of passionate teachers, full of passionate educators, and people who do a huge amount with a very little amount that is given to them. So I think that, you know, to talk about this as if it's some kind of right or requirement for everyone to have access to, private schools give people one thing, and they cause a huge amount of inequality inequality in our country. And the reason why, and it's not out of, kind of some evil conspired plan by the elites to keep things elite. Of course it's not. But it happens because people want to give their children the best opportunities to send them to these schools. But what they get from those are confidence. And I mean, I've worked with so many people at Westminster with an inflated self-sense of confidence.
Yeah, do you think that's possibly the problem with the perception of private schools? This school that is closing, I think about a third of the pupils are special needs kids, so, who cannot be in larger environments in big schools. Christine, is this part of the problem, this perception that private schools are for the elite, as it were?
Yeah, 100%. The thing is, no politicians will come down and actually take a look at our schools. And there's a reason that I was brought up in the state sector. I get it. I taught in the state sector. But there's a reason why 600,000 sets of parents choose to come to private schools. And if you want to talk about social divide, once the children have to leave, they'll force themselves, they've got the means to be able to be tutored into the grammar schools. It will create a further social divide.
Surely, I absolutely agree with Christine.
Well, surely you'll only end up with the elites in these schools if you price everybody out, and that won't. And
you don't price out anybody who can pay for their children's education anyway is already, head and shoulders above where many of the rest of us are in society at the moment. So it causes that, to say that it stops inequality because it allows some inequality anyway isn't necessarily true. But Chrissy makes a good point there, I think, about things like the grammar schools and the academy chains and those chains, those situations where people have to tutor their kids to give them that advantage, and that is like a middle class access to another elite form.
Very quickly then, okay, very quickly, I just need to get to this. Okay, so you're sort of talking about elites and everything. What about the damage that it will do to the kids and also the kids in the state sector, which will have to mop this up, James, very briefly?
I don't see how it would cause any damage to children in the state sector. If we're talking about children from the private sector,
because you've got more children at the school, haven't you? So what about if are these state schools ready?
Provision in the state school sector anyway.
I'm going to go Christine. Final word to you, Christine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree there has to be a best education for all children, but it's not by ripping apart an independent sector that actually do support children where there are no fees, bursaries, scholarships, and those children in need. And for those of us that are a charity, giving away to the needy on a daily basis.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, James Matthewson and Christine Knief. Really good to talk to you both. Well, what do you think? Are Labour's plans unravelling? A lot of people who would normally be allies to the Labour Party are now turning against it. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we will continue with the Great British Debate. I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel broadcaster, Danny Kelly, and also GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. First, let's get your news headlines.
Nana, thank you very much. 5:33 and a look at the top stories tonight. Labour is promising to bring down net migration and to put British workers first if the party wins the general election. Sir Keir Starmer says he'll introduce new laws to train British workers and plug gaps in the jobs market. Speaking to The Sun on Sunday, he said last year's net migration figure of 685,000 people has to come down. He didn't, though, set a time frame or put a specific target on that promise. Meanwhile, the Conservatives say that they would free up 20 million GP appointments by the end of the next Parliament if they return to power. The party has also pledged to build 100 new GP surgeries and modernise 150 others. They say those plans would be paid for by the cutting of the number of NHS managers to pre-pandemic levels. In Scotland, the First Minister, John Swinney, has launched the SNP's election campaign at a rally in Glasgow today. He attacked both the Conservatives and Labour, as well as speaking about the importance of independence for Scotland. And his representative in Westminster, Stephen Flynn, also told the launch event that a vote for the SNP is a vote for Scotland. And the FA says it will work with the next government to make sure that crowds don't cause disruption at major football events in the future. That's after police arrested 56 people at the Champions League final at Wembley last night, where thousands of people gathered to watch Real Madrid beat Borussia Dortmund. Some fans had tried to force their way into the stadium and others invaded the pitch. We understand the vast majority of those arrested are still in custody. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. Another update at 6 o'clock. In the meantime, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Right, well, it's officially summer. We've got a brand new summer giveaway. £15,000 of cash could make your summer a spectacular. We've also got new iPads, a new AirPods, iPhone, and £500 to spend on an attraction of your choice in the UK. So if you like theme parks and stately homes, or you fancy a spa day out, then this would be on us. Here are the details that you need.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Right, well, next up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling?
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is about the Biden administration kind of resisting calls from Harry's lawyers whether or not this ongoing thing about releasing his visa records over the alleged, in Spare, he admitted to taking, remember his memoir Spare? He admitted to taking cocaine, marijuana and magic mushrooms. And a lot of people are saying, was he honest and truthful in his application, in his visa application? You have to say, have you taken drugs? He said no, and then in Spare he said yes. So I think this is absolutely fascinating. They're saying they can't release these records because there is a stigma attached to law enforcement records. Yes, there's a stigma attached to that, but then don't say... everybody else, if you write yes on a visa application, you will be chucked out of the United States. You will be denied entry. So I think this is fascinating that on this issue of whether there is a stigma for Harry or not, he can have his law enforcement records not released into the public domain.
The bottom line is, do we want him back?
So what's interesting is it seems to be becoming a political dividing line in the States, because Biden is the administration trying to do Harry a favour by keeping them under wraps, but Trump has promised that he will, the file will be made public if he wins again.
Trump's been very strong on this. He said, if Harry lied, then he's out.
The one thing about America is their politicians make ours look sane. Which is saying something.
I'm slightly confused about this whole story because, OK, sure, Prince Harry has said this. How many pop stars, rock stars, movie stars,
the difference is, well, I don't think it's just a British. I think millions of Brits, to be fair to them, lie on the form every year. Millions of people from around the world lie on the form every year. Not, of course,
I'm not going to name any pop star specifically, but I would be mightily surprised if any hadn't indulged in what...
Yes, but of course they haven't given written evidence in their biography that they have, and that's the difference.
Britain's election channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, so if you just tuned in, welcome. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling? A second private school has blamed Labour's tax raid for closure, the 20% VAT, as well as the business rate relief, which will go if Keir Starmer comes into power. So they estimated that the money they'll raise is £1.7 billion to spend on the state school sector, but Labour have been urged to abandon it by, well, the OBR, the watchdog, has looked at it and said if it doesn't make the money you are expecting, it would be wise to abandon it, as it may cost the taxpayer money. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Labour's private school plan unravelling? Well, joining me now, Danny Kelly and also Nigel Nelson. Nigel Nelson, this is your party's plan on private schools. Mm-hmm. A lot of people coming out against it, even the unions.
Yeah, the unions are worried about teachers losing their jobs, which is what the job of a union is. First of all, we've got to see if it actually works. Now, I do appreciate that this is a tax, a bit like the non-dom tax, where people don't have to pay it. So parents can withdraw their kids from school or whatever. But what the evidence is showing is that 7% of kids go to private school. That's unchanged over the last 20 years. In those 20 years, that the real cost of fees has gone up by 55%. So money doesn't seem to be an issue with those parents.
That's a really interesting synopsis from those things. That's not necessarily the reason, though, is it? It doesn't mean that money's no object just because they're managing to pay for it.
No, all it means is that statistically you haven't seen a drop in the number of kids going to private schools despite the increase in fees. Well,
until now.
Now
2.7% already.
Yes, it will depend obviously on what happens to those parents and those fees. I'm sure some parents will have to withdraw their children.
But that's a real upheaval, isn't it?
Yeah, but the school you were talking about there was already in financial difficulties before this policy was on the horizon.
This is the point. A lot of them are. So this extra 20% might end up with closing some of them. So whatever that is, if they do close, you won't get the money. The Labour won't get the money. They won't. Danny, very briefly to you.
I wonder what Labour's plan is, as it is unravelling.
It's unravelling. Nobody's getting what they want.
Actually close a load of schools or something. Is this the politics of envy? I know they say that the 20% is going to create 6,500 new teaching roles.
That's the idea.
But it's not working, is it?
I said this before, mums and dads, it doesn't mean that that's disposable income, this 10, 15, 18 grand. They sacrifice cars, they sacrifice holidays, they sacrifice a lot of stuff to send their kids to school. Not everyone's minted, and this 20% is going to send some people over the edge.
Because the rich people will then go, I'll pay all the years up front then, and before the VAT comes in, and they can afford it. So all you'll end up with, in my view, just looking at it, irrespective of which party comes up with this, is an even greater divide between rich and poor. And a lot of kids who are just about affording it ending up in the state sector, whether that can look after them, I don't know. But this show is nothing without you. Let's welcome our great British voices. Let's see who we've got. I'm going to start with Dan Bryan in Hull. Dan Bryan in Hull, what do you think of this plan?
Hello.
Labour's plan seems to be unravelling.
Yes, they do, don't they? And if it's like in general with the world and the economy, if it's the top 1% that price rises up, they're not bothered by price rises because they are so massively wealthy. Again, it's the middle classes that strive as hard as they can and often take second or third jobs in order to put their kids through private education. They are basically being punished for going the extra mile and wanting the best for their kids. So I tell you what, how to alienate your voters. Let's punish them on education. It's absolutely ludicrous.
OK, let's go to Lee Webb.
Yeah, my take on this is that education providers should not be taxed at all, especially with that. With this, I'm hearing around about 80 to 100,000 pupils will be leaving private school and going into the state sector. So I'd like to know from Labour what they're going to do to provide 80 to 100,000 places, because they've got all the extra costs of that. They've got to recruit teachers to teach us 80 to 100,000 people, and it just doesn't make financial sense at all.
Well, it'll be interesting. If the OBR think that as well, then they may have to reconsider. Lee Webb and Dan Bryan, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you both. Those are our voices. What do you think? Stay tuned, though. Coming up, my mini-debate. Should Nigel Farage become the leader of the Tory party? That's the rumour. It's as reformed. UK's Nigel is reportedly already planning for life after the election. But next, Supplement Sunday, my panel and I discuss some of the stories that caught their eye.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, there'll still be plenty of sunshine to end the weekend, but from Monday it is going to be turning a little bit cloudier. For today, though, we've still got plenty of high pressure building across the UK, which is dominating the weather. Notice the frontal system moving into the northwest and a slight squeeze in the isobar, so turning a little bit breezier across Scotland. For the evening, though, still plenty of late evening sunshine across central and southern parts of the UK. Turning cloudier from the north, though, with some rain and drizzle moving into the northwest, and this could be a little bit heavy across northwestern hills. For most, though, quite a cloudy and mild night on offer. Most towns and cities not really dropping below double digits, but a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the very far south. So a brighter start across the south, but it is generally going to be clouding over through the course of the morning. Largely dry, but we will start to see some rain and drizzle feed into northern parts of Wales and parts of northern England. And quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and the rest of northern England, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle, but generally brightening up across parts of Aberdeenshire, though we will start to see some showers move in from the west across the Northern Isles. So a bit of a mixed picture to start the new working week, but generally it's going to be quite a cloudy picture as well, still with the odd spot of rain and drizzle moving into the northwest. By the time, though, we reach the afternoon, we will start to see some sunshine poke through the cloud, particularly across Scotland, where we will see plenty of sunshine, though quite a brisk breeze, which is going to take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. And generally, temperatures are going to be slightly lower tomorrow, but where you do catch the sunshine in any sheltered spots across Scotland, it should still be feeling pleasant and warm. Now into the evening, still plenty of cloud, which means it's going to remain fairly mild, but turning a little bit cooler across those clearer spells in Scotland, and still plenty of showers feeding into the Northern Isles. And for next week, it is generally a cloudier picture, still fairly dry across the south, but some rain and showers in the north, and feeling a little bit cooler here too.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, let's take a look at a story that's caught my eye if you just tuned in. It's the last few minutes of the show. I'm Nana Akua. It's all about Nigel Farage becoming the leader of the Tory party, as Nigel Farage is reportedly, allegedly, already planning for life after the election. Whether that's his plan, I don't know, but the party's honorary president is hoping for a Tory wipeout so he can absorb the party and transform the right in his own image. But is this a good move for British politics? Do you even believe that? Joining me, Nigel Farage, Nigel Nelson. You're not Nigel Farage.
No, I'm not. No.
Nigel Nelson and also Danny Kelly. Who wants to go first? Should we go with?
It seems extraordinary, this idea that the next Tory party or the next version of the Tory party would be more right-wing than the last one if they've lost the election to a party on the left. It just seems crazy to think you can go to the right.
Do you think the current Tory party is right-wing?
Well, no, I think the current Tory party is broadly moderate, which is where I think the voters are.
Well, they don't appear to be.
Well, no, I mean,
the Labour
I think that's because of a lot of mistakes over the last 14 years. What I'd like to see Nigel Farage doing, and this is what I felt he should have done back in 2016, I think he should be our ambassador in Washington.
Well, I think that's what might end up happening, because then if Keir Starmer...
You're frightened of him. You left me wallow you.
Well, no, but if he is the ambassador, then if Keir Starmer wins, then Keir Starmer will have to deal with him.
And also, it's if Trump wins. I mean, when Trump won in 2016, I think if we'd had Nigel as our ambassador over there, that would have been a huge benefit to Britain.
Yeah.
If Trump wins this year, the same thing could apply.
And also, if
will Keir Starmer want that though?
He won't make it. No, I mean, it's what I suggest should happen.
Well,
it won't happen.
I think he loves America Of course he does. But I think, you know, if he can do anything domestically, I think he's a real patriot. I don't think he's a nationalist, but I think he's incredibly...
You could be a patriot over there.
No, but you can't be patriotic for a country you don't belong to. I think he wants to sort this country out.
But he'd be representing Britain, so he'd be...
No, I know, but I think his priority is domestic politics, like I said. So I think he's a patriot in the sense that he wants to sort things out domestically. But it shows how ruthless the man is, if indeed these rumours are true, because once you attach yourself to one party, then all of a sudden the rumours are he's going to attach himself to the
Well, wasn't he a natural Conservative to begin with?
He was, yeah.
He was
but it just shows how ruthless he can be.
Well, you know, whatever he does, we wish him well. But I think it's an interesting idea, and I think that he might end up as a special sort of envoy for the UK from Washington. Right, let's time for Supplement Sunday, where my panel and I discuss some of the news stories that caught our eye. Danny, start with yours. Yours is about hay fever.
Well, you may have noticed, the eagle-eyed may have noticed that I have jelly eyes. It's this time of the year where my eyes will more or less close overnight. I struggle to open them up in the morning because of the eyes weeping. It's hay fever. Nigel, you and I are allergic to different things because Nigel's hay fever started in April. Mine has just started in the last 2 or 3 days. And this is from the Birmingham Post. For all you brummies up there, hay fever warning for Birmingham as pollen count soars and 6 NHS tips to stop the itching. So Google that. If, like me, you need help with your hay fever, there are some simple, easy-to-do tips. But never underestimate how debilitating hay fever can be.
I don't at all. I used to have hay fever, and I still get it every now and again. Nigel Nelson.
What caught my eye was a piece in the Sunday Mirror, which is a survey of those annoying office-speak phrases, the kind used by David Brent in The Office.
Oh, yeah.
Things like run it up the flagpole.
What does that even mean?
Move the needle.
What does that mean?
Well, exactly. People are saying that they're baffled by the meaning of these things. Touch base, hang lowing fruit. They don't like it. So
or low hanging fruit, not hang lowing fruit. That's a new one.
That's a cow.
You just created it.
So I suppose we ought
Blue
to...
sky thinking's allowed.
That's another one.
That's another one.
So we should think outside the box and circle back on these phrases.
Touché.
Well, listen, my one is this, and this is something that I thought was quite incredible. I wanted to draw attention to it. As thousands of NHS patients have been given access to trials of personalised cancer vaccines, and it's using the mRNA vaccine technique that they had with COVID, and it's the messenger vaccine that sort of gets a list of things from your body and then actually has a personalised vaccine that can treat your cancer.
Wow.
And your cancer alone. So it literally is, and it could save the NHS a lot of money. It's a national first, and lots of people in this country are now getting onto this trial. So it starts today, and there's lots of
100% success rate or something. With
it does.
the latching onto
mRNA.
That's it.
Yeah.
But what it means is that the COVID vaccine did some good.
Well,
the discovery of the COVID vaccine has led to this. So it shows where the direction of travel is now with new vaccines.
Well, also the fact how powerful we can be if we all work together to find a solution for something, and then it ends up being a solution for other things.
Nigel inadvertently came out with some more of that office claptrap. Direction of travel. It's inherent in you, my friend.
I do it.
You are the David Brent of GBNews.
Well, listen, on today's show, we've been asking, is Labour's private school VAT plan starting to unravel? According to our Twitter poll, 86% of you said yes, 14% of you said no. A lot of people seeing that plan as maybe the undoing of a couple of votes of the party, but then, having said that, the other parties aren't offering their offerings are not that great either. Well, thank you so much to my panel, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Thank you so much to you, Danny.
Thank you very much.
And also to GBNews' senior political editor, Nigel Nelson. I think I've given you a slightly higher role than your
You have,
is.
as commentator.
As a commentator, not an editor. And also a huge thank you, I've just been generous, to you at home for your company as well. I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place at 3 on Saturday. Neil Oliver is up next. I'll leave you with the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, we've seen plenty of fine weather over the weekend. However, this week is going to be turning more unsettled and a little bit cooler. For today, though, we have had high pressure dominating the weather over the UK, but we have had this frontal system move into the northwest and a slight squeeze in those isobars too, so turning damp and rather windy. It is gradually going to be clouding over from the north through into this evening, staying clearest for longest across the south. And we will start to see some outbreaks of rain and drizzle continue to move their their way into northwestern areas. So turning a little bit cooler under the clear spells in the south, but for most, a rather mild night and most places not dropping below double digits. So to start on Monday, there will be a little bit of brightness in the south, but as I say, it will gradually cloud over through the course of the morning, staying largely dry though. However, we will start to see some rain and drizzle move its way into northwestern England, northern parts of Wales, and quite a cloudy picture across Northern Ireland and northwest Scotland, still with that rain and drizzle, but brightening up through the morning across parts of Aberdeenshire, and there will be some sunny spells across the Northern Isles, but plenty of showers in between those spells of sunshine. Overall on Monday, it is going to be a rather cloudy picture, still with those spots of rain and drizzle in the northwest. By the time we reach the afternoon, it may brighten up a little bit across central and southern UK, but most of the sunshine is going to be across Scotland. However, quite a blustery day on offer there, so that will just take the edge off the temperatures a little bit. But in those sheltered spots where you catch the sunshine, it should still be feeling warm. Now, as we head into Tuesday, we are going to see a bit of a change. Further rain moving in from the northwest, quite blustery and plenty of showers behind too. However, it will still be staying dry across the south and southeast and still feeling warm where you do catch any sunnier spells, but cooler across Scotland, particularly in that wind. And as we head into next week, fairly unsettled, largely dry.